All right. All right. I just want to start off. I gotta see this video again. This video. Uh, I live. I live near Baltimore. Um, this this shit from the Key Bridge, bro. This shit is fucking devastating. Jesus Christ. Hold on. I'm gonna widen the screen a little bit. Hold up. This shit is like so devastating. Just widen the screen for a little bit. 1.6 mile long collapse. Look at this shit. Watch this. Oh my god. I didn't even see this angle. Holy shit. That whole bridge. You see all that fucking water? Is the
And
Chesapeake
then I
Bay.
asked a few other coworkers, like, did y'all just feel that? And everybody was like, yeah, man, that was hard. That was like hard rumbling thunder. My coworker goes,
Yeah, I can imagine. I have no idea what something like that would even fucking sound like. That shit sounds insane. Bro.
Jay, look, the bridge collapsed. I still am kind of in shock.
That shit. That's the angle I originally saw. 8 people on the structure plunged in the water. They didn't save them. Officially, yeah, I bet they are calling it a mass casualty event. If you couldn't save them within like the first, what, 24 hours, if that, if you couldn't even get to them? Bro. That shit
A
is
heavy ship
fucking
like that will
wild.
impart a very large load of many thousands of tons when it hits something solid. Not surprisingly, then the bridge collapses because the support is a very relatively flimsy structure. When you look at it, it's a kind of trestle structure with individual.
Um, this man, this man just said the support is rather flimsy. It's just like, did people know about that? Like, imagine just having a bridge like that over water. It's just like, it makes me funny. It makes me funny. It makes me laugh because I think it's funny that when people are designing these bridges, when they're designing it, they're not designing it with people that they care about in mind. It's just whether it's them themselves or the system they're in, they just they're just building a bridge. So when you think of it like that, instead of people are going to work every day, people are, this is business. This is people are driving over water, bro. It's just like, how was it flimsy? Why would a bridge like that be flimsy? Why? Who was in charge of this? Like, for real?
Legs.
Traffic was suspended. I bet it was. Yeah, like real expensive in Baltimore now. 15 million per day. For those who don't know, let's just pull out the calculator. Let's pull it out. Where? Let's pull out the cap. No, what? No, it's not. It's too difficult. It's not popping up. Pull up the calculator. 15 million times 300. It's 365 days in a year. 15 million times 300 is 4.5 billion. Is that correct? 15 million times 3 is 45 million. Then you add 2 zeros. That's 4500 million. Yeah, 4.5 billion. Yep, 4.5 billion in 300 days. So this is going to cost more than $5 billion. More than $5 billion in the course of a year. That's what the math is. Billion is with 9 zeros, by the way. The Dali also. Wait, hold on. What did I say? No, what did I say? Before we begin, hold on. What did I say? Dali also crashed in a Belgian port in 2016, a year after the. Well, the Dali, you're not looking too lucky, man. I wouldn't want to drop that boat. I'm gonna just take a different one. The causes of both crashes is unclear, but the ship reported losing power minutes before it hit the bridge. Yeah, I saw that in the video. Everything went dark. The crew issued a mayday call saying the had lost propulsion just before the crash. Officials say the Francis Scott Key Bridge was up to code. I don't know when did this video come out because I saw something when I was accessing my Yahoo Mail, March 28th, 2024 at 4. This was today. Yeah, it's just like I'm watching this video and it says officials say, hold on, we got 16 seconds, but keep that in mind. Officials say the Francis Scott Key Bridge was up to code. Okay, well, it opened in March 1977. It cost 60 million to build. Damn, look at those pictures. The federal government spent 44.8 billion in infrastructure in 2023. Wait, why is that even relevant? Hold on, wait.
Not surprisingly,
No, hold on. Why is that? The federal government spent 44.8 billion on infrastructure in 2023. I don't know why this fact is even here. What is that? That has nothing to do with the bridge, has nothing to do with the ship, has nothing to do with command centers and communication centers and all of that. And I just don't know why this is here. Why? Okay. The Francis Scott Key Bridge, and go back to this fact. Where is this at? Where did they say that? Officials say the Francis Scott Key Bridge was up to code. But further on in this article, it says, yeah, this is the article. Business Insider says over 17,000 U.S. bridges are vulnerable to collapse from a single hit. Feds say the Francis Scott Key Bridge was fracture critical. Authorities said that means the entire structure could crumble if one vital piece of bridge fails. We'll just stop there. So it is up to code. That's what up to code means. Either the bridge needs to change or the code needs to change. That's what I would say to that. The fact that the up to code includes bridges that are fracture critical. That seems like the dumbest shit I've ever fucking heard, but okay. Of the 16 of the 6,015 the 615,000 bridges in America, 17,468 are fracture critical. What? The Baltimore bridge that collapsed Tuesday was fracture critical, the National Transportation Safety Board said, or NTSB, said in a briefing on Wednesday. To be fracture critical, a bridge has to lack built-in redundancies, meaning if a single vital piece of the structure were to fail, either a part or the entire bridge could crumble. I would just say every bridge should double up on the most vital points. In the same way, I guess, I was going to say in the same way that we have guardrails and shit for vehicles. Jennifer Hamady, the chair of the NTSB, said, the preferred method for building bridges today is that there is redundancy built in. I guess that wasn't the case in 1977 when they originally built it. Oh, shit. This includes additional protective structures that they built. Bridge to show. Friendly said factual bridges in America. Actual bridges are a minority in America, but the Francis Scott Bridge is. Yeah, but just like, even if they are, bro, even if they are a minority in America, it almost feels super weird to just be like, that was a huge bridge, man. Let's look at that. I'm not gonna. I just need you to see Francis Scott Key Bridge, bro. Images. You know how big this bridge is? Like, look at this, bro. That's like, look how big that is, and you're telling me, where? Fractional bridge, a bridge like this should be among, even if you do, I'm pretty sure it'll never be a non-zero fractional critical bridge. You're always going to have some bridge to some extent that needs some improvements that are behind on the current standard of code. But it's just like the fact that this big ass bridge, the bridge that we were talking about earlier, that's like $5 billion, over $5 billion worth in commerce a year. That is unacceptable. How long is the Key Bridge? How long is the Key Bridge in Baltimore? It's Key Bridge. Yeah, like the video said, 1.6 miles long. Key Bridge is 4 lanes. I think it's 2 on each side. 1.6 miles, dude. Over water, mind you. It's not even like a bridge just like 10 to 15 feet above land. Oh, okay. Anyways, finish this up. Yeah, the keeper was in satisfactory condition and last underwent a fracture critical inspection in May 2023. So less than a year ago, an inspection happened to where it went under a fracture critical inspection. Let's see if the rest of the article is going to talk about it went through this inspection and said, wow, this is a fracture critical bridge. Unless it just so happened to be fracture critical between May 2023 after the inspection to March 2023. It just happened to become fracture critical in that time, which is possible. But with the way humans are, I don't know. Construction on the bridge started in 1972 when it's opened by the nice the bridge capacity plan is 99,000 people. For 30,666. Thank God only 8 people went into that water and it was at like 1:30 a.m. If this is a problem that was gonna happen, as gross as it is to say, it was probably the best way for this to happen. It wasn't during the day. It wasn't like at midnight. It was 1:30 in the morning on a weekday. It was if something like this was gonna happen, this was as gross as it and morbid as it is to say, it was the best way for it to happen. The collapse on Tuesday raised questions about the safety of Americans, including whether. Yeah, I bet it did, because people don't usually give a fuck until something bad happened. It's unclear if possible protest its groups and dolphins made a difference. Well, that's possible. That was a big ass shit. That like no amount of like that level of we can't build bridges with the amount of fortitude and able to handle a ship of that size. Which makes sense. Like if every bridge was like that, it would be like $500 million for every single bridge. No one would agree to it, obviously. On Wednesday, the NTSB reported the ship radio for help for nearby technical. Minutes before its crash, it was too late. Data the NTSB received from the ship's voyage data recorded shows two construction workers were rescued after the crash, while six were presumed dead. Authorities said that two bodies were recovered from a submerged pickup truck. Damn, well, they all bodies now. If they find anybody, they all bodies. But I gotta piss. We're gonna watch this video and react to it. So give me 1 second. Take a piss. I'm gonna take a piss. game, baby. Let's close this window. All right.
What was JP like before and after the convo? Oh, that's such a good comparison. God, that was such a great... Isn't it more likely that people are either misinformed or misguided than people are legitimately trying to depopulate the planet? This is such a good line of questioning. This is what I went into this debate wanting to see. Is it like, if I would have quoted this old speech back to him, it would have been so interesting to see his take on it now. Oh, it was this. Okay, yes.
This used to be vaccines. Now this is vaccines.
No, it was like this and now it's like this.
No.
When you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution.
That was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all, actually.
What do you mean redistribution wasn't an issue? What the hell do you think they did to the kulak?
God! Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting sucked back into this. This debate was 2 months ago. I want to be polite because I enjoyed the conversation. But God, his political understanding is unbelievable. Like, what was the problem with the Soviet Union and communism? And he says redistribution because taxes are too high. Redistribution. It's like the conservative critique. It's like somebody took conservatives under Reagan, calling Democrats communists their whole lives, and then pretended that the democratic communism that exists in the United States was the same as the communism of the Soviet Union. Wait, what the Deepak, thanks for the 700 viewer host. Oh my God, sorry. Oh God, I'm getting sucked back into remembering these unbelievable arguments. The central problem for people that care, the central problem with like socialism and shit isn't redistribution or taxes. Taxes have nothing to do with socialism. The problem with socialism are like planned or command economies. That's the issue. It's not redistribution.
From what I know about socialism, from what I know about socialism, I can understand that an economy that wants to, it almost feels like it's inorganic at the end of the day. A command economy in which the government is saying, these are the goods we're going to make, these are the prices, these are how much we're going to make, these are, like, having a government do that, having anybody do that, instead of just like letting it naturally play out. I don't know if economies are the types of thing. They're so complicated that even economists disagree. It's hard for economists to predict anything. So with that being the case, the idea that with predictions of people who study the economy for years and they can't even come to an agreement, the idea that you're going to dictate this is how the economy is going to go and this is what will is like, you don't know. So you don't. Unfortunately.
Isn't the problem that the redistribution is at gunpoint? No, it has nothing to do with redistribution. There is no redistributing in like socialism. Well, I mean, there kind of is, but it's not. That's not. When we think of redistribution in the West, we're thinking of taxing people and then giving that money back in the form of like government subsidies or government welfare, right? When you're talking about more socialized or communistic systems or whatever, you're talking about changing the inputs and the outputs of your economy, and you're talking about having these directed by a central government or bureau. And in an idealized form, you're talking about a ownership of the actual capital itself by the workers. None of this is redistribution. Like in a very abstract form, you can call it redistribution, but chances are if you call it redistribution, it's because you don't understand any of the models at play. You don't understand the capitalistic model or the socialist model. Can you give a concrete example of how the command economy falls short? Well, yeah, every country that's tried. If your inputs and outputs are being determined by like a central body trying to figure out who needs what, you're just way less ability. You have less of an ability to be responsive to changing conditions on the ground, basically. As people want different things, as money shifts around, as opportunities become available for whatever, there could be a variety of ways that this functions. Government policy can lag behind what a market would solve in a very quick, real-time manner. By the way, I'm not saying markets are perfect. I'm not going to hedge that, though. If you think I'm saying that, drink bleach.
You're welcome to join us. And
I think Destiny's just using a different definition. Wait, hold on. Am I getting triggered? Wait. Destiny, you need to understand he's talking about the redistribution of food if you're talking about the Soviet Union. No, I don't think he is, but we'll get there. Could you call Amazon a form of planned economy? No. Destiny presumes that the government has the people's best interest in mind. No. Oh, Wolfie.
He said anything that sounds close to that. He was just describing. It was a descriptive statement on on socialist economies.
The one short now comes with a liner. It was already my favorite short. It really was. And now guess what? Now they got an inside no bounce pocket.
What a hilariously, naively, retarded way to view other people or to view the world. The government doesn't have the people's best interest. The government is composed of a bunch of people, or comprised of a bunch of people that want to win elections. Now, typically you do this by...
Okay, but if that's the case, then it's kind of like I don't disagree, but how come politicians never say that? And if the argument is, well, people won't vote for them otherwise, then the people are stupid. Then the people are equally, there's something wrong. They have a brain problem. There's something wrong with them. If the idea of a politician saying to you, I don't have your best interests at heart, I just want to win. If that's not natural to you by now, you're way behind in the game, buddy. Sorry. It is what it is. It's really just how it is.
Adhering to what people want, but you could also find ways to do it that doesn't adhere to what people want. There are sneaky, weird things, but the same thing can be said for corporations as well. If you truly want to level up to the next level of being a thinking human being who's not a sheep that just follows whatever stupid online influencer you happen to watch the most of, okay? Understand this. Everybody has incentives. Very rarely are those incentives make the world a better place for everybody. That's true of corporations. That's true of the government, okay? Everybody has incentives. They respond to them predictably. You just try to follow where the incentives go.
Argue that having those incentives, like everything about society has like incentives for you to, incentives, and you're being pulled in different directions. You'll have incentives to participate in the system that Destiny is talking about here, or you'll have incentives to maintain your principles in a way. Like, for example, you might want to, if you're a police officer, you might want to report something that's bad at your precinct. Hey, I see this other police officer is doing some fuck shit. I'm gonna report them. But the system is set up in such a way that if you do report them, you will be reprimanded for them. You will be reprimanded for doing the right thing that most people would agree is the right thing. So it's just like, it depends on what the incentives are. I mean, yeah, there are incentives, but just like in positions of like government and positions of business where you're affecting other people's lives, people hold a higher standard. So just saying there are incentives, yeah, but just like you will always and forever, no matter what you do, people will never ever hold the same standards for businesses and government, especially government, businesses and government, as they do an average person or in their day-to-day life. They expect more from them. You're making money off of people, you better be doing the right fucking shit. You're controlling and dictating people's actions, you better be doing the right fucking shit. And if you're not, that's on you.
And then you try to construct a system where the incentives hopefully point you in the right direction, okay? That's what Adam Smith was talking about when he talked about the invisible jerk-off, okay? Is you have a hand that sneaks into your pants that you can't see, that nobody can see, and it jerks you off as long as you're sitting in the right position. And sitting in the right position means that you have all of the particular externalities accounted for with government policy. It means you've got all of the particular capital rules and all of the particular government restrictions set up so that when people are jerking you off, okay, they're not going to come everywhere. Right? That's what it means.
I started early on. I was well, I guess back then you weren't a professional gamer yet because the game had just started to come out, but there was a game called StarCraft 2. And
I need to find a snappy way to put together my backstory. We should think about this for a second because everybody always asks me this. How'd you get into streaming? Bro, I don't know. How'd you get into psychology? I just ordered a new shirt. It actually just came in the mail today. I don't know if I saw this on Twitter, but when I go to New York City, I'm doing like 3 shows now. I'm going to be on Ryan Long's show. I'm going to be on that Around the Table or whatever, and then I'm going to do something with Big Ack. I think I'm going to wear this shirt for every single appearance. It just got in the mail today. I love it. I love it. I might wear this shirt every place I go to. God damn, look at that American eagle with the flag over the goddamn Constitution. Hell the yes. I'm curious to what extent you would consider yourself pro-Israel as opposed to simply being against the narrative of Palestinian oppression, wherein the Palestinian side can do no wrong. I don't know, I'm probably like 65 or 70% pro-Israel. It just depends on where you're at. If I start talking to any like that Simcha Rockman guy or whatever. If I start talking to any crazy pro-Zionists, I'm probably going to come off as super anti-Israel. For Peterson, you actually did really well for how respectful you're forced to be with all these big timers. Do you agree with JP's take on your temperament, like on relative agreeableness? I'm probably a person who's very low in agreeability. I think that's probably true as a temperament, yeah. I mean, I'm literally like a debater archetype, right? How would I be anything but low in agreeability? Or low in agreeability. You fit in well with almost any community and get along with anyone. I don't know how that fits into your agreeability. Agreeability, I think, just has to do with a temperament.
I wear a few different hats as CFO. You know, sometimes it's referred to as Chief Fixing Officer. Wherever there's a fire in the business, you know, I'm often there first.
I think it would be said in general that if you're very high in agreeability, it might be impossible for you to super disagree with somebody, to fight a lot on an opinion. But I think if you're very low in agreeability, you can probably just like chill, I think. That'd be my guess. I'm kind of making my temperament sound objectively better by saying I can do both though, so. But I do think it's objectively better to be low in agreeability, so I would say that, yeah. Agreeableness is the general concern for social harmony. Agreeable individuals value getting along with others. They are generally considerate, kind, generous, trusting, and trustworthy, helpful, and willing to compromise their interests with others. Agreeable people also have an optimistic view of human nature. Oh, well, fuck, hold on. Disagreeable individuals place self-interest above getting along with others. Well, no. Well, now maybe you could argue the other one. An agreeable person is optimizing for the social situations, but they can argue or disagree with somebody if they want. They can fight with somebody if they want. I might be using agreeable incorrectly here. In terms of like the 5-factor personality shit. Your assumptions of why JP are wrong. He thought and read more on the leaders and their ideas than I think you'd believe.
There we go.
Okay, I don't know how to convince you of this, but just as a quick thing, if a man who has to say that he is the king is no true king, okay? Saying that you've read or saying that you've done this or whatever doesn't matter. If you've truly read and understood something, you should be able to incorporate it into your own thoughts, your own speech, your own worldview. Yeah. This puts my agreeableness at 65. Openness at 90. That makes sense. They say that people that have done mushrooms have higher openness than, like, it permanently changes. So, wow. Okay, anyway, back to this. Do you think Jordan B. Peterson got so argumentative because he's trying to test if you're truly low in agreeableness? My hope was that he got really argumentative because, one, I was willing to play back, which is, I think, is fun, and two, is because he enjoyed the conversation, and three, is because he was passionate about the things he believed in. That would be my hope for why he got argumentative. But what was JP like before and after the convo? Was he nice to you? Yeah, most of these people are usually pretty polite in person. Yeah, I think most of these are... Most of these people are really polite before and after, except for Norm. I didn't say a single word to him before and after. The Wayne guy was more polite, though. He talked significantly more than you. I think him cutting you off all the time gave you the feeling you had to be more concise than you probably needed to be. Yeah, everybody just likes to talk a lot.
Okay, got the Mingo
especially on their own shows. But, whatever.
Got my boy Mingo.
Did you ask him about his daughter ghosting you like 10 times? Nope. Oh, also, I need a list of like the most retarded possible things that you could say about like Kendrick or Drake or J. Cole so that I can troll the out of Big Ac. Somebody write me up like a few paragraphs and I'll roll with it.
A particular game I might be playing.
We already know this.
It might
You've
be,
heard this.
And like
no one cares. Honestly, Jordan's main forte is on the trans issue where he started. The more the subject deviates from psychology, the lower the quality becomes. Maybe, yeah, but man, I've heard him talk about... I think I've heard him say dumb things on depression. He said some outrageously stupid things about ADHD, which is obviously an area that I know more about. So, I don't know. He's wandered. He's strayed.
So is your concern essentially something like the observation that if people are bereft enough of substance?
This is also something I super appreciate. I try to do this with other people. I think I do. I usually try to verbalize this before I answer a question. Is if somebody can summarize what you just said and repeat it back to you in their own words, then it shows that they have an understanding of what you've just told them, and then you can move on from there. As fundamental and simple as that sounds, it's nice when somebody can do that.
The observation that if people are bereft enough of substance, let's say, that it's difficult for them to take advantage of equal opportunities, even if they are presented to them, let's say.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And and you have some belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have some belief that there is room for state intervention at the level of basic provision to make those opportunities more manifest.
Yeah, to varying degrees, yeah.
I hope so. Because on the other end of that, you're basically saying, I don't believe in any type of taxation at all. Do you really think people would come together to, like... Because I don't know. People would say, like, would you put money down for roads? Well, people would probably be like, do I ever drive in that area? If not, I would only want to put money toward the roads I personally drive on. But it's just like, that's not how... It's not really how a country works.
So would you be in favor of making college free like in Europe? I don't know where I'm at right now in college. I actually don't know if college affordability is a problem at all in the United States right now. I saw a really hilarious thread pop up yesterday, and it was a thread in our economics where it felt like...
No, boys, I'm letting that go. I will say, for the college thing, I feel like if you don't have your degree and you haven't been back to school in like 5 years, that should be like they should pay that back, because on one end it's kind of like you don't have the degree but you have the debt, so you have like the double negative, and it's just like, who is that helping? Like, imagine doing debt forgiveness for all the people who don't have degrees, haven't been back to school in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Would that be possible? Because those people are probably not making decisions that maybe they would buy a house, maybe they would have kids, maybe they would buy a car. Like, they're making decisions to where, like, I can't do this thing because I am paying off my student loans and I don't have the benefit of an elevated career from getting my degree. Wouldn't it be better, like, in that sense, you should just forgive, for the benefit of all of us, you should probably just forgive that, but...
It felt like somebody posted a link to shit on how worthless college was becoming or something, but two completely different types of people showed up in this thread. One were students who said they went to college and they graduated and they couldn't find jobs, therefore college was worthless. But the second one was recruiters who showed up to argue about how poorly equipped college kids were to, do work, which was why college was useless, because the kids sucked at everything. And it was funny watching these two people fight each other for what were both stupid arguments. Did I save this thread? This guy describes himself as average looking and says women won't date him because he's Middle Eastern, which is really funny because I'm pretty sure in America and in Canada, I don't think we even see Middle Eastern. It's just, if you're dark enough, we'll call you brown. But if you're just like if you're like a light-skinned Middle Eastern person, people will find me on this, but I don't think in America we would think you're, like, if you saw Hassan in public, I think you're just thinking like, oh, it's a white dude. You're not thinking like, oh my God, that guy looks like he's from the Middle East. I don't think you're ever thinking that. Same thing with this guy. Oh my God. This guy's posting thinking that because he's 5'9".
I don't know if this is just a black thing, but like, the idea of like when it comes to white people, it's just like, you can tell when you have like American white people and then you have like non-American white people. And that's kind of how I see it. So when I see someone like Hassan, I'm going to think, yeah, they're probably like I'm going to look at Hassan like, he's white, but I know he's not like European white. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has enough color in him, or whatever, however you want to, he has enough color in him, or at least ethnic features, for how we want to define that. He has enough to be like, I know he's not American white. I know he's not West European white, which is, yeah.
Or maybe he said 5'11". No, he said 5'9", and he's Middle Eastern, that white women won't give him the time of day. I'm like, bro, in the United States, anybody looking at you is just going to think you're white. What are you talking about? Reading through this guy's comment history was so sad. Can you imagine? He's got posts where he's like, yeah, I think I'm just like an average looking dude. Imagine, it's so funny because if a girl were to write anything like this, she would be excoriated. She would be destroyed online. You know when women go to those subreddits where they're like, rate me, or like, am I ugly? r/am I ugly? And it's a girl's like a 9 out of 10. And she's like, do you think I'm ugly? Imagine if you're some 200-pound guy who's 21 years old, who's already 50% into his like male pattern balding phase. And you have a guy like this saying, yeah, I think I'm probably like an average looking guy. Bro, I would kill myself. I would kill myself. But it's really funny because he's got in his profile, if you read through his comments, I think he's like, yeah, I listen to Jordan Peterson every day, and he's taught me, like, he talks about like hoflation.
Get that Riz up, boy. Get that Riz.
I consume Jordan Peterson, Chris Williamson, Tom Bilyeu, Alex Hormozy. Oh, we watched a thing by that. Andrew Huberman, and More Plates, More Dates. Oh, he posted in that subreddit too. 100% agree. I've been watching Jordan Peterson explain hypergamy, and it's getting worse if you're not a dude who earns more money than the majority of women. Also, go watch Chris Williamson with Alexander Date Psych on YouTube. They explain really well why men are struggling, but women are doing just fine. God, look at this guy. I just like, damn, how mindful are you to look like this and be like, yeah, I just think that women won't me because I'm 5'9". My God.
5'9"?
Do you think he's above average looking? This guy? In terms of like entire body? Yeah. And even with like a shirt on and stuff, like he's got a nice smile. He's got like a nice proportioned face. His hair looks fine. He's like, what is he, 29? Yeah, his hair looks fine. Like everything. Yeah, he's like, yeah. Looks good with a shirt on and everything. This guy's super, yeah, 100%. Can you explain why women get away with that shit? Like almost all the Asian women are vocal about how they prefer white men. Because I think generally you can shit on men, and if you're a woman and you're like in that category, you can get away with saying retarded shit. But it is really gross though. Like, yeah, like it should be treated the exact same. Something else is interesting in that there's so many dynamics at play. I haven't heard this from Asian people. I have heard this a lot from Middle Eastern people. I'm trying to think if I've heard any Hispanic people say this. I don't think I've heard any Hispanic people say this. For Middle Eastern people, when I hear Middle Eastern women talk about how they want to date white men, I think that when they say white men, what they really mean is they're doing like they're doing like the opposite of a passport bro thing, to where passport bros might go to the Middle East or some shit because they're like, I really want a traditional woman. But sometimes educated women from the Middle East are like, I really want to get away from these traditional men. So I have heard that. I've heard that several times from Middle Eastern women.
Probably a paradigm thing. Like the culture of my area subjects me to so much of X that I'm looking for Y. And culture in another area subjects me so much to Y that I'm looking for X. I feel like it's just like basic, like grass is greener for people, which is why they do that.
Who are like, I don't want to date guys that earn less than me and treat me like shit. Or I don't want to date guys that think I'm like a baby production machine, and these guys are like literally second children. Like I have to adopt this man who can't take care of himself. I don't know if that's as true for Asian women or not, because I feel like I'm borrowing a lot of anecdotal here. I feel like the Asian men that I meet aren't like tradcon traditional men. So it doesn't make sense for Asian women escaping those Asian men. But also a lot of the Asian people that I know are going to be like San Francisco, LA Asian guys in like tech communities. So maybe that's not representative. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's also a perception of white people being rich. There's an element of status for Asians if they date a white person, in my opinion. Yeah, for us, I mean, I understand that in the East. But
what did he say? Repeat that.
For Asians if they date a white person, in my opinion. Yeah, for us, that's not representative. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's also a perception of white people being rich. There's an element of status for Asians if they date a white person, in my opinion. Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, well, for as far as United States goes, and perhaps even as like world history, it's not surprising that white areas or white countries or white majority continents would give off a energy of higher success, of wealth, of, you know, power, dominance, all of that, considering the history. So it's not really.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I understand that in the East, but that doesn't really make sense in America right? Because in America, bro, every Chinese girl I've hooked up with, these people, like, if I'm visiting them, I need a gate code because they always live in gated communities. They always have huge houses. They're always from hugely wealthy families. Although, again, to be fair, I lived in Southern California. These people were always fucking loaded, though. But maybe, but I feel like on average, it's got to be true that on average, median income, white versus Asian family, household, USA. The Asian one has to be significantly higher. Oh, income. I don't want wealth. I want income. The household median income for Asian Americans in 2021 was $101,418. That's 43% greater than the national median income. What are white Americans at? Racial wealth snapshot. Why do we not have white on here? Indians are by far the wealthiest households, but they're pretty low on the totem pole of dating. Yeah, that's true too. It could be that white is associated with wealth though, and that's like a generationally inherited bias. It doesn't make sense in the environment in the USA, but like people might inherit it, the bias, and they come over here and they still have it. So it'll be bred out in like a generation or two. Sorry, I meant from when I speak to my family / friends back in Taiwan. It's also pretty funny how the psycho the Taiwanese / Chinese incels are, and how they talk about how white men take all the women. Oh yeah, I've heard that. I've experienced that. If you go with Tinder to any like Asian country, this was true in. I didn't have Tinder when I was in South Korea, but I went out a few times with Naniwa, and in where else have I been? Taiwan. In Taiwan, it's insane. If you go on Tinder, there's a white dude. It's like being a woman in America.
If you've been in IT for a good while, I'm sure you've used platforms that simply just don't work. And this is where Atera is a complete game changer. It's an all-in-one IT platform that offers remote monitoring and management, help desk and ticketing, IT automation. What did he say?
In like a generation or two. Sorry, I meant from when I speak to my family / friends back in Taiwan. It's also pretty funny how the psycho the Taiwanese / Chinese incels are, and how they talk about how white men take all the women. Oh yeah, I've heard that. I've experienced that. If you go with Tinder to any like Asian country, this was true in. I didn't have Tinder when I was in South Korea, but I went out a few times with Naniwa, and in where else have I been? Taiwan. In Taiwan, it's insane. If you go on Tinder, there's a white dude. It's like being a woman in America. It's insane, yeah. To be fair, a lot of Asian dudes are pretty misogynistic at times, so a lot of Asian girls here choose not to date them. Think like comp/gamer type of dude who are really sheltered and not social. Yeah, I guess the problem is that like that might be true, but it's so hard for me anecdotally to grapple with that because most of the Asian guys that I know are pretty, I don't want to say meek, but they're like quieter gamer type dudes. Like I'm thinking of people like Albert, like Slightly Musical, that was his name, right? Like that dude wasn't misogynistic at all. Or most of the Asian gamer dudes I knew, all of these guys were super chill. So like anecdotally, that doesn't synergize with what I'm thinking, but it could be true on a wider spectrum. I just don't have that firsthand experience. How do you pull Destiny? I usually buy boots with really thick inserts at the bottom so that I can appear 6'1" instead of my ordinary height of 5'4". I'll try to run a Lamborghini so that if a woman is hypergamous, you can see that she'll upgrade based on the car type that I'm in. I'll usually try to hire 3 or 4 really attractive prostitutes to hang out with me who are 18, 19 max so that she can see that I am signaling high social value. And then after I start talking to her, I'll hold the conversation for about 60 seconds max before ignoring her. So that she sees that I have better and more important things going on in my life. Oftentimes I'll give her my phone number and my Instagram. The phone number will always be the wrong number, so she feels like I don't give a she'll my Instagram so that she can DM me afterwards. These are all like the super high level tricks that I employ to maximize my pull.
Like, it's very easy for you to get laid in China as a foreigner. Get laid. Get your sucked. It's easy to get bitches if you are a foreigner. Like, I don't want to say this, but it's truth. Because a lot of girls are curious about erotic culture, like a different culture from them. So if you're from a different culture from them, they will be curious about you. How do you know? Because No comment.
Awesome.
What about BBC?
Okay.
Like,
does this work for blacks too? I think it might be a little bit harder for blacks because I think there's a lot more racism in Eastern culture against blacks. I don't think black people would have the same. I don't think they would have the same luck. Maybe with some people you like can hyper score, but with other people I think you would. I think it would generally be harder. I'm always reminded of the.
There's an equal mystery on the left and on the right in this regard, is that the more conservative types tend to be very skeptical of big government, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations. Right? Well,
this is one of the reasons why I said on that left-right paradigm, it really only works when you're dealing with liberals, like liberalism, when you're dealing with conservatives or Democrats and Republicans on the liberal spectrum. But if you go far enough to the left and far enough to the right, it breaks too much. He said leftists more skeptical of.
I agree. I get what Destiny is saying, but it's just like hold on. Say that again.
Said on that left-right paradigm, it really only works when you're dealing with liberals, like liberalism, when you're dealing with conservatives.
I don't know how much we're dealing with liberals though, bro. I really don't, because it feels like everyone wants authoritarianism in some capacity. If it means everyone, because people are so insecure that if other people aren't living the way I'm living, that's terrible. So therefore, I have to force them to live the way I live. It's just like it's not enough for some people to live and let live, and as long as everyone's happy and not infringing on other people, that's okay. There are people who are like, no, I don't care if you're not infringing on any people. You're infringing on this nebulous concept of, like, if two gay people decide to fuck each other, they just decide to fuck each other. I'm trying to imagine, like, oh man, I got denied that job promotion because, you know, these two gay guys were fucking each other, or I got, my wife decided she's going to leave me because she found out at work there were two guys, that there was a gay guy and he has a husband. Like, I'm trying to imagine, like, how the sanctity of, like, society and, like, all of that stuff is like, people don't believe in liberalism for other people. They only believe in it for themselves. It's like, I want to tell other people what they need to do and how they should live, but that's for damn sure you're not going to tell me how the fuck to live. Because I'm a hypocritical ass bitch, which is most humans.
Or Democrats and Republicans on the liberal spectrum. But if you go far enough to the left and far enough to the right, it breaks too much. He said leftists more skeptical of corporations and the right are more skeptical of governments. Why would you disagree with that? Pointless. Because that's not what the political paradigms work like anymore, you moron. What do you mean? He said leftists are more skeptical of corporations and the right are more skeptical of governments. That made sense.
More skeptical of corporations? I will say any corporation that doesn't fit their agenda. So during COVID and all that, it seemed like people on the left trusted that institution. Maybe not trusted the institution, but the fact that they were so worried, or their mind was so preoccupied with a pandemic that they said, I'll listen to this institution. So it makes me wonder if they actually had a principled position against the institution itself, or if they just did it because rich corporation bad, which I'm gonna need some deeper analysis on that, left-leaning people.
20 years ago in the United States. That doesn't map on to the current political realities. The current political realities, the farther right you go, I say far right, really the Trumples, the new era Conservative Party is actually pretty anti-big business, anti-corporatism. That's a pretty big hallmark of the current populist bend of conservatives. Now, Trump kind of like skirts on both sides of these, but if you listen to a lot of the newer, younger, more kind of like far right people, they're not going to sit here and suck out big business. People like Facebook and these huge lobbyists and the Jews and all these shit are like their mortal fucking enemies. And when you say that, like the right are skeptical of governments, leftists, when you get into like the communists and the socialists, they're super skeptical of governments too. Their entire worldview is informed by U.S. government, USA, everything that the U.S. does and stands for, everything that.
But at the same time, like those socialists will champion stuff like socialism, into which it almost begs the question for a command economy, because it doesn't seem like people can do it on their own. We haven't gotten there. We haven't seen a example of communism or socialism in which there is not a top-down thing. What does socialism or communism look like from the bottom up? So
that the government supports. Even government welfare is bad because what we really should be doing is mutual aid and changing the entire mode of economic organization. So no, what do you mean? It's not irrelevant for me to contest that point. The reality is that doesn't map on to our current political reality anymore. What he's saying makes sense 20 years ago. It doesn't make sense today. If you're being honest, why does it seem like you won all the debates with larger figures? When, to be completely fair, you're probably not entirely win-winning. What do you, have I ever said that I feel like I won every single one of these conversations? Most of these conversations aren't even over particular topics where we're taking contrary positions. Like, it's hard to win any general conversation where we're just like feeling each other out. Like my conversation with Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, these are like broad conversations where we're bouncing through a lot of topics. It's not one like Norm Finkelstein or one like I haven't had as many like one-on-one particular topic debates recently, but it's not the same style of conversation.
I mean, that brings us into the issue too of whether the left-right divide is actually a reasonable way of construing the current political landscape at all, and I'm not sure it is.
I don't like it when people say that like the conservatives today are like the people of the 60s. When I say potentially, I don't know how much I want to flesh out or fight on every single thing. People get to similar belief sets, but in totally different ways. So it's you have to be careful when you say like horseshoe, for instance. Horseshoe is kind of true in that applied positions can start to mirror each other, but they get there in very, very different ways. The left, the far left, doesn't get to anti-Semitism or the far left doesn't get to anti-Zionism through anti-Semitism. It gets there through anti-imperialism or anti-West or pro-Marxist thinking. That's how it gets there. So even if the far left might look the same as the far right, who might be anti-Semitic or conspiratorial, and the applied positions look the same, Israel and Jewish influence on the United States, and Jews are all up to weird shit. Even though it looks the same in the applied world, they've horseshoed there. They've gotten there. I mean, even by definition, look at a horseshoe. You get there in different ways, right? Yeah.
But
right now it kind of is, but only because so many conservatives are following Trump. So like
on the horseshoe. The reason why horseshoe theory is odd because it makes me think like the reason why it seems like when you get super extreme, the problems that you notice or the problems that you think are most important are the ones that you exemplify. I don't even know if that's a word. Amplify, or the problems that you amplify. And yeah, so because of that, they might have different prescriptions about how society should work to fix those problems, but it's like people on the extremes tend to acknowledge the same issue. They just have different ways of solving it.
Like your populist, anti-populist thing kind of maps on kind of cleanly to the left and right. It doesn't work with progressives though, or the far left, because they're also anti-large everything. So in a surprising way, on very, very far left people, you might find them having a bit more in common with kind of like a MAGA Trump supporter than like a center-left liberal. So for instance, like both of these groups of people on the very far left will be very dovish on foreign policy, probably a little bit more isolationist. They're not a big
dovish for different reasons. Dovish because there are people probably on like the far left, progressive left. Every single war, no matter what, is imperialism, and on the other side, we shouldn't be involved in anything at all. But we're number one in the world, but we shouldn't be involved in anything at all. Which you can't have both.
Big fan of like a ton of immigration or a ton of trade with other countries. They might think that there's a lot of institutional capture of both government and corporations. So all of the MAGA supporters and the far, far left might think that corporations don't have our best interest at heart and the government is corrupt and captured by lobbyists.
Yeah,
you'll see a lot of.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I would say, I wouldn't say any huge institution has external things with best interest in heart, and only insofar as it continues the running of that institution.
Overlap there.
Right.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One, this is something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. I think that people are largely guided by whatever is kind of satisfying them or making them feel good at the time. I think that's a really important thing to understand because people's beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to imagine that a belief is coming from some underlying principle or is.
If that's true, then why do you think it's so common for people who are de-radicalized to just become re-radicalized to the opposing side? Probably because these people don't have a stable system of belief and they don't have a stable like social group that they belong to. So they'll bounce from one social group to the next because they're looking for a group of friends or they feel outside the whatever particular social system they're in and not accepted. So they go from like extremist fringe group to extremist fringe group and you bounce around that way basically. Oh my God, bro, stop pausing the video. Here's the full video if you want to watch it. Good luck. Bye. Permanently banned. See ya. Why do you ban people when you can wait 10 seconds and the message is going to flood away? Clearly you care too much and you're quite fragile in a sense. So the issue is most people, when they are trying to form opinions about people, what they're doing is they are looking at the person themselves and what they do like 10% of the time, and they're looking at what other people say 90% of the time. So in my own community, I have to walk a fine line between like banning people that are just shit posting or providing nothing of valuable substance, or having people that can provide criticism, but it's like of substance. There's plenty of places on the internet where people just flood like random retarded things at me. Why would I let it stand in my community and then reach a critical mass where I've got like anti-fan hate community in my own community? Plenty of other people host unhinged retarded criticism of me 24/7. Like I don't need it in my community. If you have a good criticism, I'll understand. If for no other reason, because the community can engage with it, I can engage with it or whatever. But if you're just saying like random retarded shit, like no, like there's plenty of other places. Like if you're gonna accuse me of being bad faith or some shit, why would I ever host that criticism? It's stupid. And I don't want like that. Why would I want that growing in my own community? It's dumb.
Where all people are poor, there isn't much social unrest, and where all people are rich, there isn't much social unrest. But when there's a big gap between the two, there's plenty, and that's mostly driven by disaffected young men who aren't very happy that they can't climb the hierarchy. There are barriers in their way. And so there is reason to ameliorate relative poverty. The problem with that, to some degree, is that most attempts to ameliorate relative poverty tend to increase absolute poverty, and they do it dramatically. And the only solution that we've ever been able to develop to that is something approximating a free market system. I wouldn't call it a capitalist system because I think that's capture of the terminology by the radical leftists. It's a free exchange system, and the price you pay for a free exchange system is you still have inequality, but the advantage you gain is that the absolute levels of privation plummet. And I think the data on that I think they're absolutely conclusive, especially, and that's been
Technically, this point doesn't make sense. If he complained that relative poverty is the driver and inequality is the driver, I like how he uses relative, which I'm pretty sure is a code word here for inequality, because I think that is what drives crime in areas. It's not absolute poverty. It's the inequality between the rich and the poor. Wouldn't it be better to increase the rate of absolute poverty as long as we bring down the inequality? Wouldn't that be a goal if we're trying to just reduce crime?
especially
If that was the goal, that would also be equally terrible. Just having more poor people.
Now, I don't know if that would follow empirically, but deductively from the premises he set forth, it would seem to be true, right?
Demonstrated in the radical decrease in rates of poverty since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, because we've lifted more people out of poverty in the last 4 decades than we had in the entire course of human history up to that date. And that's not least because the statist interventionist types who argued for a radical state-sponsored redistribution lost the Cold War, right? And that freed up Africa to some degree, and certainly the Southeast Asian countries to
Jordan P. Peterson gets away with saying the data/studies on this are clear without saying any data or naming any studies. If I'm having a general conversation, I'm generally not going to be doing like source vetting, like, oh, well, name the study, or like what it's just not worth it for a general conversation. If we were having a precise,
the idea of even pulling up a study in the middle of a debate, I understand why you would do it or the desire to do it, but it's just like there are a lot of pitfalls that come with that. And it's just kind of like, I see an ant. Hold on, I gotta kill it. I gotta kill it. Hold on, it's an ant. I gotta kill it.
Dice conversation about something where I was familiar with the literature that's going to be relevant to the conversation, then I will be asking, well, who says that? Where did you get that from? Let's think about that. Like my Norman Finkelstein debate. Do you ever feel extra pressure to not cut them off or hold them to the fire due to their status or authority as an intellectual? Not that you don't see yourself as one, but maybe do you feel threatened at all? No, I don't typically feel threatened in these conversations. I might have felt threatened a little bit in the beginning of the Finkelstein-Wien conversation because I was legitimately curious if I was about to get buried by historical lack of understanding. But in these, it's usually just feeling the other person out. And I don't want to start off as being unhinged. Remember, you always let the other person strike first.
I just wanted to be clear on that. So I'm absolutely a pro-capitalist, pro-free market guy.
You did say that you weren't prepared for the conversation to go into a deep global warming debate. At that point, you weren't nervous. It depends on, there's multiple ways to engage with the conversation. We can either engage on the factual level, where we're going to debate the facts, or I can engage on a philosophical level. So for instance, I can try to point out a contradiction in your argument if I don't have the facts. Now that's a much scarier level to engage on because if the other person is familiar or can maneuver the conversation well, you're going to get completely blown the fuck out. Or I can try to like focus on another point that's more philosophical.
That's why you don't research it. Just go see and buy.
Philosophically related and less factually related, which I think is the direction I go, which is I have to re-listen to it. But I think the question was more just like, listen, I'm not going to say I disagree with you or agree with you on particular fact-based things, but like, can't we agree that if people believe this particular thing, it's not because they're all fucking evil, right? Because our main points of contention, remember, the main points of contention between the right and the left don't actually have to do with the fact of the matter of climate change. It has to do with people on the right thinking that climate change is a tool used by George Soros so that we all have to eat crickets in the future and eliminate.
I think people's biggest thing with climate change is that I acknowledge that climate change is a real thing. I feel like people have an issue with the solutions. So because people have an issue with the solutions, and I think this is stupid, they just dismiss and hand wave just fucking all the, like there's some area, climate change is already affecting certain areas in the world, like today. It's not like a future problem. It's already affecting some areas today. So it's like, if you don't want to believe in it, you're saying, I don't believe in it when confronted with reality, which means no conversation with you is even possible. But on the other end, it's kind of like, let's say there's a climate change solution that we implement. Farmers have to use this soil. Like, let's say farmers have to use this soil that's more green, like a more green, less pollution, less, if that soil costs 3, 4, 5 times as much as the soil that the farmers are already using, your solution necessitates that some farmers will not be able to access it because it costs so much. You need to think about that. Are my solutions viable for the current state? Or do they take into account what farmers pay and give a solution? What seems to be like
eliminate our population or something. Like that's really the central disagreement.
When you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution. I think the problem—
That was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all, actually, I would say. I think the issue was command economies.
Wait
go ahead.
Wait a minute. What do you mean redistribution wasn't an issue? What the hell do you think they did to the kulaks?
It's just such a not, like, the Holodomor wasn't an issue of like redistribution, or these huge famines weren't issues of redistribution. They were issues of famine and then the things that followed, which you could argue it wasn't even redistribution, it was just stealing crops from starving people. It's not really, but I don't even want to, it's just such a dumb, and then to relate this to like redistribution in general just doesn't make any sense.
That was forced redistribution. It resulted in the death of 6 million people. So maybe I'm not understanding what you mean, but that was redistribution.
Also, this isn't redistributing like taxes from wealthy people to poor people. This is stealing food from starving people. Like this is just.
When I think of the strengths of capitalism, the ability for markets to dynamically respond to shifting.
Yeah, but redistribution, as he's using it, isn't taxes. It absolutely is. It's what he's trying to relate it back to. Yes, is forced redistribution. Yes, it's trying to be. It's trying to be related back to like taxation and liberals, and this is what they. It's just not worth. It's not even worth it to bring this up or go down this rabbit hole. It's just not. It's not worth it.
Consumer demand is like the reason why capitalism and free market economies dominate the world. When you've got socialist or communist systems, command economies, where a government is trying to say, this is how much this is going to cost, this is how much you're going to produce and make. This is a failed way of managing a state economy. Even in places where they still do it, there are always shadow economies and stuff. There were in the Soviet Union that prop up where people try to basically ameliorate the conditions.
Isn't his point land redistribution? Kulaks or large landowners having their land forcibly requisitioned? Listen, if you disagree with me on this, then just disagree with me on it and say that I'm wrong, and that's fine, and we'll move on from this, okay? I haven't done an extensive studying of the Soviet Union. My understanding is for the Soviet Union, for China, the reason why famine and everything got up and was horrible wasn't because they took land from some people, and it wasn't because that of redistribution. The issue is that the country tried to modernize in an incredibly accelerated timetable, so much so that in the course of this modernization and industrialization, they didn't have enough food because they were so busy transforming farmland and shit into industrial land or more productive land that they didn't have the food to feed the people. That this was the huge issue. So to say that it was an issue of redistribution, not really. There are other ways that this exact same thing could have been affected. It just
that could be our like we have 50 years to do.
Redistribution was like a part of this, but it's like it would be like saying the reason why so many Jews died in the concentration camps is because of the type of gas they used in the shower. Like if they would have used Zyklon B, it would have been different. It's like kind of, but not. I don't think that's not really the central issue. I don't think. Destiny, the issue is collectivism. That is literally about okay, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, that's fine. No, it was. I'm sorry. I'm wrong, and you're right. It was collectivization. You're absolutely right. It was big government, collectivization, and gigantism. You're absolutely right. Okay. Yes.
Conditions that are resulting from said horrible command economy practices. So I guess in a way you could argue a command economy is kind of like redistribution. It's a form of it, but
no, it's a worse problem. If you're pointing to the fact that that's a worse problem, I'm with you
I would say that's
100%.
definitely the reason why these places failed, because they just weren't able to respond to changing conditions.
Okay, so what's the difference between it?
Destiny, is it just me, or is it just me? You seem to start slow, then get stronger as the debate goes on. Is it just because as time goes on, you can corner the opponent? No, it's usually because we're filling each other out. Again, I don't really start super hard. Destiny, you're the only political figure I watch that cares so much about how people arrive at their political opinions. Why is it so important to you, and why don't others care about it?
Everyone is a fucking grifter. Everyone is in favor of immediate gains. They will lie, connive, they'll backstab. Seems like everyone in media is only focused on where can I get to next. Seems like every politician is what can I do to get elected? How can I convince people to elect me? Every business is like, how can I convince consumers that I'm a good person and that I have a good product, not actually have a good product? Because every single thing about this existence, I wouldn't say every single thing, but it's just like when it comes to, I'll probably say the overwhelming majority, I would say so, that people are way too focused on themselves. You can have a good idea for a system, but if every individual in that system is only focused on their short-term gain or their personal long-term gain, then the system will be corrupt and it'll fall apart and it will be absolutely hollow. It will not serve the purposes you want it to. At least on the surface it will, but nothing with substance.
Because how somebody gets there is everything. I don't know how else to say that. It's like once you start doing Does it happen in algebra? Probably even in algebra, but certainly once you start doing calc, the answers to your problems don't really matter that much. Most of the points, like we would have like 10 point, 20 point questions, and like I think you get 2 points for the right answer. The right answer is just not that important. The process is everything. Destiny, this is not the first time you've talked with a conservative who isn't familiar with politics and makes significant assumptions about you based on being liberal. Is that an advantage since you can disarm them with the correction, or just annoying that they aren't familiar? I mean, it works in some ways and it doesn't work in other ways. It works in some ways in that they're thrown off balance. So I get like, it's easier for me to navigate arguments because I'm on familiar territory and they're not. And other ways it doesn't work well because people think that I'm lying about my positions. That's like, oh, really? A liberal who is who wants to ban second and third trimester abortions are a liberal?
Then fuck them. If you can't take a person like, hey, this is what I believe, unless you have a reason to think they're a liar, then fuck you. You're a bitch.
Liberal who's pro-gun or a liberal, they'll think that I'm being disingenuous because of the platform that I'm on. I think Jordan B. Peterson contradicted himself on this statement. Most people who abuse others were abused, but most people who were abused don't abuse others. Wouldn't it mean number of abusers drastically reduced from Gen 1 to the next? Most people who abuse others were abused. Most people who abuse others were abused, but most people who were abused don't abuse others. No, it doesn't. There's a statistical inference here that makes this work. Go read it on your own. I'm too lazy to explain this. According to Tim Snyder, it was not food shortages, but food distribution that killed millions in Soviet Ukraine, and it was Stalin who decided who was entitled to what. I'm pretty sure the famines were real. I think it was a lack of food, but distribution, absolutely. Distribution, I'm pretty sure, was absolutely a problem in all of these countries. In every.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related to your work. Your documents, your chats, your whiteboards, your projects.
Communist-style country. Distribution is always a huge problem. Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Encrypted network in cafes, hotels, or airports, you leave your data vulnerable. Any hacker on the same network can steal your personal data, such as your passwords and financial details. It doesn't take much.
Who got the food? Wasn't it mainly people in Moscow? People in what do you call Russia when you don't include? What was the name for like the Russian province? What was the name? Like, would it even be what the fuck would you call it?
Mother Russia.
So like in the Soviet Union, you had all of the. I don't know the names of the Russia SFSR. Like just the Russian country itself, not including places like Poland or any of the oblasts. Would it be an oblast? But anyway, yeah, I think didn't Stalin prioritize this like European part of Russia more than anything else? I totally get what you're trying to say. Issue is that I think socialism tends to prioritize redistribution over private property rights. When people say redistribution, okay? And listen, if you want to get into a super nuanced argument about this, you can, but Jordan Peterson didn't illustrate this, so I am running on some assumptions. But when people talk about redistribution, they normally talk about taking things from one person and giving things to another, usually taking things from a wealthy person and giving to a poor person. Generally speaking, in the West, that's what we mean when conservatives say redistribution. The Soviets and the Chinese had issues with distribution, but it wasn't bad because it was redistribution. It was bad because of the.
So if you're someone that says, I don't believe in redistribution, you do not believe in taxes. It is what it, like, stand on it. Don't be like, well, I do believe in taxes, but I just don't believe, like, nope, you cannot. I don't see a way you're going to have one without the other. If you don't agree with this redistribution, then you do not agree with taxes, full stop. And some people could say, I don't agree with taxes, which is an argument you can make, which is fine, but have that argument. Don't say, well, it's not that I don't believe in taxes, I just don't believe in redistribution. No, sorry.
The mode of economy of trying to figure out from a central governing body what your economic output should be rather than using market forces. That was the issue. But I wouldn't call that capitalism versus redistribution. It doesn't make sense. I would call this like planned or command economy versus free market or mixed market economy. That's the distinguishing. Maybe I feel like in the literature, I feel like this is how these terms are referred to. I could be wrong. Somebody can link me a paper. Maybe I'm just incorrect. But I haven't heard of a command economy or a planned economy where your inputs and outputs are dictated by a central governing body, irrespective of market forces. I haven't heard of that referred to as redistribution. Redistribution usually refers to tax schemes or taking from the wealthy, giving to the poor, generally. That's it. You just wouldn't call that. It's not like redistribution. You would call it an issue of planned command economy versus free market or mixed market economy. Yeah. Can't you say their command economy is driven by desire for redistribution? I just don't think I would use, because like in the United States, I'm a huge proponent of redistribution. It's an incredibly positive thing. We should absolutely be, because of the fact of marginal utility. We have to do like an Econ 101 course. Okay. I can't do every goddamn fucking explanation for everything. Okay.
Yeah, you can.
There's a concept called marginal utility. What marginal utility means is the next thing that you have doesn't matter as much as the thing before it, okay? If we say that this is $10,000, okay? Going from $0 to $10,000 is a really big deal, okay? Going from 10 to 20,000 is not as big of a deal. It's still a big deal. You're doubling your money. 20 to 30 is nice, for sure. 30 to 40 is still nice. 40, at some point, you get to, if you've made $200,000 and somebody takes 10 grand from you, depending on your financial situation, you might not notice, right? This is marginal utility. Marginal utility means that the utility that you get from the next thing tends to decrease, right? Do you see this? If we measure the difference here between the utility that we get, if we look at our curve, the utility you get from one unit to the next, see how it's decreasing, except for my drawing is bad? It's decreasing as the curve gets lower and lower, such that when we're up here, look at the utility difference. It's almost non-existent, right? What this means is that if you're measuring society on a function where we're looking at the overall utility of society, if you take something from a guy up here and you give it to a guy down here, whoa, we've just created so much from that thing, right? If you steal $10,000 from me and you give it to a poor family, the improvement in life of that family, theoretically, for at least some number of months, is going to be massively outscaled versus my $10,000 that I would have just spent fucking your mom 1,000 times, right? That's marginal utility, okay? If this concept is true, which it is, undeniably it's true. The concept is true, then this is the argument in favor of things like progressive taxation systems. Like, oh, wealthy people can probably afford to pay a bit more because the marginal impact on life is lower. So you take a little bit more from here, you redistribute down here, and then it's like, okay, right? This is a taxation scheme, and I would call this redistribution. Planned economies.
Yo, I cannot believe these shorts from Fabletics are 2 for $24. Look at the shorts I used to wear to the gym. Now look at the Fabletics.
We are trying to say, like, there's people here, we can produce this much here. Let's go ahead and requisition 10,000 units from here, and these guys need 10,000 units. Okay, well, these guys need 4,000 units. We're gonna requisition 4,000 units from these guys, and we're gonna run this for a while. This form of like trying to plan your economic inputs and outputs doesn't work, because let's say 2,000 people move here in the course of a year. This central body can't figure out, like, in a very quick and adaptive way, well, okay, well, fuck, how much more do we need to take from them? How much more do we need to transfer here? Do these guys need to send us? It's impossible. You can't do it, okay? This is called the calculation problem, okay? Anybody that tells you this is solved with AI, tell them to rope themselves, okay? This is stupid, okay? But the calculation problem is a famous issue relating to command or planned economies, because you can't figure out. Now, if you have a free market, this problem is solved not only almost instantaneously, it's solved automatically, right? If these guys are all, if we eliminate this bullshit and they're just buying and selling, oh, well, this is super easy. A bunch of people leave here. Oof, well, all these people left here. So your demand is decreasing, okay? Meaning that your price is decreasing. Well, or no. Yes, meaning you're not gonna sell here as much anymore, right? Holy shit, the demand has fallen so much, people only wanna pay $5 per unit when we were selling at $10 per unit. And now these people down here, there's so many population growth, there's so much population growth here. Well, these guys were buying at $10 a unit, now they're buying at $15 a unit. Holy shit, we need to get some fucking trucks to sell food to these people, right? This is how market forces, when you're using supply and demand, are helping you distribute shit throughout your economy in a more efficient manner. The allocation is more efficient. Capital flows very quickly and identifies new money-making opportunities and moves away from things that are moving money in a very quick and efficient manner compared to planned economies or command economies where a central governing body is trying to calculate all this shit on its own. Okay. Nothing that I just spoke about here. None of this, free market versus planned, none of this I would describe as like redistribution. It's just, it doesn't make sense. Like in a free market economy, the producers here are like, in a way, kind of redistributing their supply to down here, but it doesn't make, it's just dumb. Okay. Can you explain why AI can't solve it? I mean, theoretically, if it was powerful enough, it could, but it's so many inputs and outputs. It's so much going on in an economy. There's like there's probably trillions of variables, maybe 100, maybe more than that, whatever is quadrillions. There's just so many variables in an economy that it's hard to adapt to all of it with one central calculator. You might not even have access to all the information necessary to make these calculations. This is super interesting. Why are you so irritated by the topic? Because people's understandings of modes of economy and modes of production are so rudimentary and irritating, and then people have really strong opinions on it that they'll say shit like,
yeah, because the school, either the school will teach you, but then you'll have politicians and people who want to paint a narrative that will tell you a completely different story and overwrite shit.
Like, oh, well, actually, the reason why the Soviet Union fell is because of redistribution from wealthy people, and it was high taxes that were in. It's like, no, it's not high taxes. No, it's just not, that's not what we're talking about at all. From this logic, wouldn't it be moral to take, when you look at the Venezuela huge problems, for instance, that was an issue relating to planned economic policies. So for instance, my understanding is, and I'm pretty sure this is true because I have said this a lot, nobody's corrected me on it, but in Venezuela, the government was saying, these products are too expensive. We think you're ripping off our people. We're going to start using price controls. A price control means that regardless of where your supply and demand curve is, right? I don't know how to draw these because I've never taken a formal class. Suck my dick. Wait, what's the thing? I don't care. Okay. This is quantity produced at a given price. This is supply demanded at a given price, and your equilibrium is where your market exists. So these are your producers, these are your consumers. If you have a widget that's worth $1, they're gonna buy 1 billion of them. If you've got a widget that's worth $1 billion, only one person's gonna buy it. And for producers, if you could produce a widget for $1, you're not gonna produce any of them. And if you could produce a widget for $1 billion, you're going to produce a lot of them, but nobody will buy them. So you meet in the middle here for your equilibrium. What a command economy does is, what a price control does is a price control seeks to shift this equilibrium point in an unnatural way, higher or lower down this curve. So an example of moving it higher would be a minimum wage, that's a price floor. An example of moving it lower would be a price ceiling, right? So for instance, if I think that this is the natural price of corn at $10 a bushel or whatever, well, fuck the, do you buy corn in bushels? I don't fucking know. And I wanna say, well, no, we should actually set the price of corn over here. Well, what's happening? The issue with setting the price of corn down here, there's fancy boxes that people draw to measure this that tells you something, but I don't know it off the top of my head. We thought about it if we could. The problem here is that, well, producers aren't gonna wanna produce as much, right? Well, now you run into a problem because if I produce down here, it might be that my profit level might only be right here, right? I might only be profitable here. So if you move this price control, if you move the ceiling of the price down too low and you force these people out of business, well, now nobody wants to sell products in your country because it's not profitable to do so. And then people stop producing shit and now you're fucked. And I think that was a big issue that happened in Venezuela. That's an issue relating to
hack someone.
Price controls. Okay. What I just described there, by the way, setting a price control that moves the economy too out of whack and causing negative things to happen outside of that price control, that would be considered an externality.
Are you constantly overwhelmed with your workload? Look at this schedule, perfectly organized and managed with every task.
No, wait, or maybe that wouldn't be an externality. Maybe that would just be considered, would that be considered an externality? Where's my econ people? No, actually, that wouldn't be considered an externality. I don't think so. That would just be part of the resulting fallout from your economic policy. I don't think that wouldn't be an externality. Never mind. That wouldn't be an externality. Because externalities are things that aren't accounted for generally in whatever economic model you're setting up. An externality is going to be, it's called externality because it's not related to directly to your pricing of anything. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Jesus. All right.
Hackers can make
You realize you are regurgitating Econ 101 nonsense. Firms don't make decisions based on supply and demand, but on markup. Look into Keynesian economics. What? Firms don't make decisions based on supply and demand, but on markup? When you say markup, what do you mean by that? I don't know the term. I mean, maybe because I only did the Econ 101 lecture series. So when you say markup, what does that mean? Are you talking about profit margin or? So glad he caught that. Am I getting trolled? Also, Keynesian economics isn't going to fight against Econ 101. It's called Econ 101 because it just gives you a general guideline to understand, like, this is the general principles of economics. But in the real world, things are going to be more complicated, of course. Look up Keynesian economics as a sentence goes hard. I love each other. Okay, fuck you. I'm not getting trolled by this. Okay.
Financial details. It doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone. Hackers can make up to
So is that the argument against rent control? Yes, correct. Yeah, good job. Wow, good for you, Chatter. If I was a teacher, you'd get bonus points for bringing that up. The issue with rent control is that if we draw our curves, okay, if you would supply a given apartment, okay, this is the supplier, this is the consumer. I don't know how they normally draw these. But if you would supply apartments here, but somebody says, oh, well, we're only going to allow you to rent right here. Well, what are you going to do? You're probably going to reduce the supply that you offer. You're going to be investing less into whatever buildings you have. So that might mean less renovations. It might mean less new construction or whatever. You're going to invest less because now the price isn't as worth it for you to compete. It's not where this natural equilibrium point is for you producing a certain quantity for a certain price. Yeah.
Gets back to the Peterson part.
Nice graph to the point you're trying to explain. Supply is the negative slope, the demand is the positive slope. Oh, well, fuck you, I mixed my slopes up. Suck a dick. Maybe you should do your research. Control F markup. How do you change the market point without price controls? Well, you can't, it's not, careful with what I'm saying. Changing the market point isn't necessarily bad, okay? So for instance, okay, hold on. When I'm talking about descriptive things, okay, try to blow this out of your mind if you can. When I'm talking about descriptive things, I'm not saying that these things are necessarily bad or good. They're just things that are. So for instance, let's say that there's a supply demand curve where a company is only profitable here, and this point here represents a $1.50 an hour wage, okay? But let's say that we've set a minimum wage way the fuck up here, where you have to pay this much, okay? Well, if you said the top one is usually the supply, right? Well, at this given price, a producer might not be able to produce anything. They're like, well, fuck, this isn't even worth it. I can't produce actually below like this level. It's too much for me, right? But do we want businesses in society that can only function with paying wages of $1.50 an hour? Probably not. So in that case, having certain price controls that make these things non-competitive might be good. It might be, oh fuck, we don't need this business in society, you know? The inverse is demand. You got trolled. I wish I had the same audacity as Destiny to speak on things on which I had the wrong basic understanding of. Everything that I just explained is super Econ 101. What do you think I'm misunderstanding or not explaining correctly? I don't think I've even said anything. I think everything I just said you probably won't learn in week 1 of an Econ 101, of a high school econ class. You did get trolled, supply and demand, or how you had it before. Oh, okay. Any subject you talk about, there's a teacher in here. Triggered? Drill. Isn't the natural price of corn the cost price of making it? Wouldn't you be able to set a fixed price based on that? Oh man, do we want to, I don't know how much I want to do this. No. When you're talking about these supply and demand curves in general, you're not talking about, okay, the specific terms I believe that you would be using is you would be using quantity produced at a given price and quantity demanded at a given price, okay? That doesn't mean what is the base cost. What you're asking fundamentally, or broadly, I guess, what you're asking is how much of a given unit or how much quantity of a given thing would a producer produce given that it could sell it at this cost or at this price. Fuck. So that's going to incorporate things like how much profit do you want to make? What's the raw cost of materials? What's my cost of labor? What's my cost of effort? It's going to incorporate all of those things into your very broad level thing, right? So if I say like I need to sell iPhones at $1,000 each because that's the only person I'm selling for, that might be with $100 markup or profit, right? You want to make a certain level of profit, otherwise you go and invest in other. I think the term is NPV plus projects, net present value plus projects, meaning whatever your dollars are going into right now represents positive cash flows in the future. So the net present value of your cash investment into a given product, I think, is higher as opposed to NPV neutral, NPV negative things, which is if you're investing money now, you're losing money in the future. I think that might be Econ 102 or 201. I didn't go that high. In an ideal market, doesn't the profit tend towards zero over time? Isn't that a Marxist idea? Like the theory of the falling rate of profits or some bullshit? Isn't that a Marxist idea that was never actually proven or never actually came to fruition?
I don't believe that because if that was the case, like how much time were we waiting
No, that's true, Destiny.
How much time are
I don't think
waiting
that's
for that to
true.
be the case? Like how many years of like profit?
That's not Marxism
like,
at all.
Saying, like,
there's a
business runs for
Marxist
10
idea. What's it
business
called?
runs for 10 years.
Why are you saying it's not at all? Isn't that a central part of? That's a central big point on the. It's a central huge prediction made by Marxists. According to Marxist theory, the declining rate of profit is what leads to recurrent crises under capitalism, since it reduces incentives to invest in dispersed capitals. There's a name for this. I think it's a more. It's the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Is a theory in the crisis theory of political economy, according to which the rate of profit, the ratio of the profit to the amount of invested capital, decreases over time. The hypothesis gained additional prominence from its discussion by Karl Marx in chapter 13 of Capital Volume 3, but economists diverse as Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, David Ricardo, and William Stanley Jevons referred explicitly to the TRPF as an empirical phenomenon that demanded further theoretical explanation, although they deferred on their reasons why the TRPF should necessarily occur. I don't think this has necessarily been observed, right? Like, wasn't this basically saying that all profit is going to fall to zero at some point, but it still has maintained like relative consistency over hundreds of years? Jesus Christ. It's just because the market gets so competitive that it approaches cost, right? That feels like it just makes sense. Well, I think that for that to work, okay, last side of it. I think for that to work, I think that only works if you assume a perfect, perfect frictionless competition, that every person can enter a market with zero friction, everybody can produce a given good or service at the exact same cost, that everybody has perfect access to all markets, that every consumer has perfect access to all information. I think that in that world, theoretically, if I could go and create a phone as efficiently as Apple, and there wasn't such thing as like an economy of scale, there wasn't such thing as market access, there wasn't such thing as advertising, then maybe, but that world doesn't exist. So I don't think that would ever happen. Hold on, I'm gonna have to go have a shootout with the cops. 1 sec. I'm just gonna use the bathroom. 1 sec. Oh, Jesus. I just got to the part where Killua and Gon got abducted by they're not called the Shadow Troop. It was the Shadow Beast. Oh, they're called the Phantom Troop. Are they going to kill Gon? Destiny likes to say, I'm a capitalist, and then astutely argue against most key tenets of capitalism. Let me have it. What? Everything I just said is squarely. What are you, Puffy Shirt 681? What did I just argue against that's against capitalism? Are you guys, I feel like you guys are like, I feel like this is you guys crafting like the perfect retarded bait statements to try to trigger the fuck out of me. I feel like the rate of profits to fall hypothesis is true in some markets. Like I doubt plastic straw manufacturers are making as much profit as they did a long time ago. Maybe, I don't know. But the rate of profits falling wasn't a market specific analysis. That was supposed to be an analysis of the entire market or all markets, right? This would be an amazing one guy emote. Holy shit, why don't we have this? Do you support Keynesian or Austrian economics?
Life can be risky. Switching to Optimum isn't. Our 60-day money-back guarantee means you can switch to Optimum Fiber Internet and Mobile risk-free.
Anybody that says that I'm like a Keynesian or Austrian, it's so reductive. What do you mean? There are different policies. Both of these schools are going to approach different aspects of economics in different ways. But I doubt you're going to have like a completely and totally 1 billion% orthodox take on the entirety of the economy using just one like school of thought. I'm sure any modern economist is probably incorporating thoughts and ideas from plenty of schools of thought into how they view the economy, right? Okay. Destiny comparing taxation and redistribution in the United States to the coercive redistribution policies of the Soviet Union was the most retarded thing I've heard him say in a while. You're so close. My whole argument is that you wouldn't compare these two things. They're not comparable. That's why I don't like it when Jordan P. Thank you for summarizing everything. Yes, it would be retarded to compare those things. That's why I don't like it when somebody says, oh, the Soviet Union did redistribution. That's why I'm against progressive taxation. Because of everything I just explained. It wasn't really a redistribution. It was a whole different economic mode of organization. Okay? Okay.
Why doesn't the government that's bent on redistribution fall prey to the pitfalls of command economy and forced redistribution?
Now that we're watching the video.
For that matter, how do you protect against that?
I think what you have to do is very, very, very difficult. Is people get very ideologically captured by both ends, and they feel very, committed, or they feel very allegiant to pushing certain forms of economic organization. And I think sometimes it blinds them to some of the benefits of what exists when you incorporate kind of multiple models. Or
I think all I'm saying is that like the way to avoid it is you just try to maintain like a heterodox view, I guess, on running economies or government, right? Like don't get completely ideologically captured from one side to the other. I feel like it's kind of, maybe it's a little indirect. I wonder if anything was cut before this, but I feel like it's.
I mean, you call them mixed economies, which is really what every capitalist economy today is. It's some form of free market capitalism combined with some form of like government intervention to control for negative externalities. These are the ways that all economies, even in Scandinavia and the world, work. And I think that recognizing the benefits of both systems are the best way to make things work.
Fair enough. And the Scandinavian countries seem to have done a pretty good job of that. But like I said, they have a simpler problem to solve, let's say, than the Americans have. Negative externalities. That's an interesting rabbit hole to wander down, because the problem I have with negative externalities, you made a case already that, and again, correct me if I've got this wrong, but I think that I understood what you said. A free market, free exchange economy is a gigantic distributed computational device.
Basically, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Which, funnily enough, one of the big problems for command economies is called the computation problem, because no central body can actually...
Actually, it's called the calculation problem, retard.
compute,
Yes,
the ins and outs of.
right, exactly. Right, that's not, that's a fatal problem, right? Because it doesn't have the computational power. It certainly doesn't have the speed of data recognition. It doesn't.
Why do you do that though? He's asking you, not where do other people make the mistake. I swear you answer 30% of your questions with what people don't understand. Well, because the implication is this would be a mistake you should avoid. Like if somebody says, how do you avoid the pitfalls of going too far to one side? My answering, oh, well, I just don't, because that would be stupid. I think the answer would be like, well, you have to be careful what to do this or that or avoid this or that. I think you're generally speaking more generally. If he asked me, if he turned it around, I was like, okay, well, if you were the dictator, how would you avoid this? And I would give a different answer, but...
Doesn't have on the ground agents if all of the perception and decision making is centralized, right? It's way too low resolution. It's going to crash. Okay, so, and I think that's comprehensible technically as well as ideologically. All right, so, but having said that, with regards to externalities, all the externalities that a market economy can't compute are so complex that they can't be determined centrally by the same argument. And
there are ways to account for them, though.
Really?
That work with.
Tell me.
Yeah.
How. Because I can't see that. Because I can't see how that they can be accounted for without the same computational problem immediately arising.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I think that's a problem sometimes of people very far on the left when they want to deal with certain problems. I think that they want to bring like heavy-handed, like things like price controls in to say, well, we need less of this, so let's just make this cost this particular thing, which ironically enough introduces a whole other set of externalities that will happen when you get a lot of friction between where your price floor or ceiling is set compared to what a market would set it at. But ideally, if you're a reasonable person and you view economies as mixed economies, what you try to do is you try to take these externalities, meaning things that aren't accounted for with your primary system. So in a capitalist system, an externality might be something that causes a negative effect, but it doesn't cost you any money. Pollution would be a good example of that. And rather than saying like, well, no company can pollute this much, or, if you're a company, you have to use these things because the other things are making too much pollution, all you do is you say, okay, well, if we've determined that, say, carbon is bad for the atmosphere, well, we're just going to attach a little price to that.
Okay,
government is going to say that, yeah, if you pollute this much, here's the price. And then if you want to pay for it, you can. But that type of intervention in the economy basically allows the free market to hopefully do its job because the government has tacked on a little bit of a price something that tries to account for the cost of that externality. Yeah.
Great. That's a great example. We can go right down that rabbit hole. Carbon. If you ameliorate absolute poverty among the world's 1 billion poorest, they take a longer view of the future. And that means they become environmentally aware. And so the fastest route to a sustainable planet could well be the remediation of absolute poverty. And the best route to that is cheap energy. And we're interfering with the development of cheap energy by meddling with the hypothetically detrimental externality of carbon dioxide. And so
to the dungeon where the music
a lot of right-wingers seem to think you lost this exchange on the climate change. Well, every exchange where they disagree, they're going to say I lost. They're going to say the same thing with vaccines and everything too. Again, I'm not trying to appeal to like the hardcore right-wing people, just like people in the middle that kind of like wander through basically.
The first thing, this is going to sound mean, but I'm very realistic. There needs to be a better argument than just it disproportionately impacts the poor. That's not always
a classic leftist argument.
Sure, it might be, but
right, but it's the same argument you made to justify your swing to the left at the beginning of our discussion. You said that you were looking at economic inequalities that disproportionately affected the poor. So
one thing that's very frustrating,
I
ask for. I do debates where I ask for a piece of paper to write things down. This happened a lot with Finkelstein and Moyne. And I have so many points written down here that I want to respond to. I think later on in this debate, I tell him, like, let me finish, and he lets me. But I've written down so much that I wanted to respond to for what he just said. But then he goes,
paying full price for anything nowadays is a scam.
Watch this. I can show you how to get the sweetest deals online when you shop from major retailers like Amazon and...
Goes off on another tangent after I do a sentence. And I'm like...
economic inequalities that disproportionately affected the poor. So I can't see why.
How bewildered were you at this point? I'm actually not bewildered at all on any of these points because I know where they're all coming from. These are like really standard conservative talking points, but they typically tend to be non sequiturs that don't they're non sequiturs that come from an emotional place. So.
Oh, damn. God damn. Oh! me use the bathroom too. Oh, they fucking me up. They fucking me up. Fucking me up. You say you good, you care. All right. Hold on, let me nice and close.
So, for instance, saying things like climate change impacts poor people more. That's not an argument against, or I'm sorry, climate change policies impact poor people. That's not an argument against climate change policies. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, if we are to believe that climate change is going to destroy the planet, it doesn't matter that policies might impact poor people more, because the overall net benefit to hurting poor people versus destroying the planet is obviously self-evident. There's a greater benefit there, right? So the question becomes one of like factual disagreement. So a lot of the arguments are, they don't really stack up. They just don't say anything meaningful. Like sin taxes negatively affect poor people. That's not an argument against sin taxes though. But I think I'd even written down, I think that point to respond to, but I don't know if I ever get to directly because he always,
And I'm not trying to be mean about this either. I can't see why you could base your argument that it was more.
His argument is that you're gambling with poor people's lives. Yeah, but that you understand that's the same argument on the other side as well, right? That if climate change is real, it's going to impact poor people more than wealthy people. How many people moving are going to be people in more impoverished areas that are near coastal areas, that are closer to the equator, like some of the more impoverished countries anyways? Like these are going to be people that are going to be disproportionately impacted. It's going to be poorer people rather than wealthier people. Do I say this? Oh, I hope I say this. Okay.
Well, because it depends on if we think it's a condition that ought to be remedied or not. For instance, if I walk, around and I see homeless people and I'm like, man, this is really sad. We ought to spend more money on homeless people because it seems like they're disproportionately affected by their living conditions. And then somebody says, oh, well, do you think we should still lock up, rapists and murderers? Aren't they disproportionately poor?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I did say, well, yeah, we probably should. And I go, well, isn't that hypocritical? Well, no, I think that rapists and murderers should probably be in jail, but we can also help the homeless at the same time. I think that just helping the poor isn't an argument like a blank check to do every possible thing to satisfy poorer people.
Right,
it's going to depend on.
I guess on in here.
From issue to issue.
That's fine.
So, like for instance,
that's
I think
because the poor, everyone who's poor is not a victim. Some people who are poor are psychopathic perpetrators.
Sure.
And it's very useful to distinguish them. But I was making a much more specific argument.
Jordan Peterson would be the kind of guy to say that stopping
Welcome to AFK Journey, the best RPG for all players. If you're an adventurer, you can't miss it.
Shinra would hurt the poor people in Midgar. True. Destiny, how do you respond to Shapiro's talking point that why aren't real estate prices plummeting on the coasts? It depends on how much people have factored in rising. Aren't there places where the sea level has risen a bit where real estate costs are starting to reflect that? Hasn't that happened in some places? I don't check real estate prices much, so.
Bought a billion people is through cheap energy.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. So just working my way towards that. I just want to say that just because something targets the poor is not necessarily an argument against it.
Depends on how hard it targets them, and it depends on whether mass starvation is the outcome.
The outcome is important. That I agree with. So for instance, like a sin tax.
The outcome will be mass starvation.
Yeah, I'm getting to it. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting to it. Okay. Sin taxes on like cigarettes and alcohol are always going to disproportionately impact the poor, or even sugar, we might say, right? But just because that disproportionately impacts the poor, is that a good thing or a bad thing? These are probably the people that suffer the most from those particular afflictions. Right. So,
do you think there is sufficient proof that climate change is real by modern models? If so, there's a good enough reason to hurt the poor now? Yeah, but I mean, you obviously don't want to hurt the poor. You want to mitigate that as much as possible. But I'm pretty sure, I don't think climate change is debated much in terms of, is it a thing that's happening? Is it largely human driven? I think now the questions are more like, what is the impact it's going to have on the planet? And how can we adapt to that?
And that is an immediate versus delayed issue too, right? Because the reason...
Well, is it immediate? I mean, obesity isn't immediate.
No,
I don't think alcoholism
the reason
is.
for...
Your video is top 5 view-wise of JP's videos on his channel? I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it's even close. He's got tons of multi-million view videos on his channel. What are you talking about? Popular? I have to go down like 50 videos or more. What?
So I'm curious, let's say that we think we can accurately predict the climate and the economic impact, and we think that the climate impact would be far worse if we don't account for that, both in terms of human conditions
I don't believe any of those presumptions. I think
but then if you don't, but I mean, like, obviously, if I agreed with that factual analysis, I would probably agree with you on the prescription here too, right? And I thought that like none of the climate models were accurate or couldn't accurately predict anything, then I'd also say why make...
Well, they're not sufficiently accurate. That's the first thing.
And I don't like that he's not engaging with my point here. I feel like we get sidetracked a lot sometimes. Like, I'm trying to...
If you're going to offer sufficiently accurate, you should be like, in order to be sufficiently accurate, I need X, Y, and Z.
You're drawing a distinction between the applied theory...
You can just throw that out there and not say that. Yeah, it's a little weird.
Versus, or not even the applied theory. I'm trying to draw a distinction between the conclusions that we're drawing based on the premises before us. That, of course, we're drawing different conclusions based on the premises before us, but if we agreed on the set of premises, we'd probably agree on the conclusion. But he's not engaging with that. He just is really triggered on the climate change thing.
I also say why make...
I shouldn't have uttered the word carbon. I didn't realize that was going to be a 40-minute trigger point.
Here too, right? And I thought like none of the climate models were accurate or couldn't accurately predict anything, then I'd also say why make...
Well, they're not sufficiently accurate. That's the first thing. And because they have a margin...
He's just bad faith? I don't think he's being bad faith. I think he feels very passionate about this particular thing.
Margin of error, and it's a large margin of error. They don't even model cloud coverage well. That's a big problem. They don't have the resolution. They don't have nearly the resolution to produce the accuracy that's claimed by the climate apocalypse mongers.
People keep saying that, but we just got another one of the hottest years on record. How many times are we going to have another hottest year on record? How many times are we going to have an increase of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere before we're finally like, okay.
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because it depends. The scientific answer to that question depends precisely on the time frame over which you evaluate the climate fluctuation. And that's actually an intractable scientific problem. So you might say, well, if you take the last 100 years, this variation looks pretty dismal. And I'd say, well, what if you took the last 150,000 years? Or the last 10,000, or the last 10 million? You can't specify the damn time frame of analysis.
The time frame is incredibly...
I wouldn't say he's bad faith, but do you think he's a bit senile? Jordan Peterson, senile? No, I don't think so at all. No.
Million. You can't specify the damn time frame of analysis.
The time frame is incredibly important. That would be like saying, look at your, let's say somebody developed cancer and they didn't realize it, and the person has lost, 40 or 50 pounds in the past 6 months, and somebody's like, you look very sickly. And you're like, okay, well, look at my weight fluctuation over the past 10 years. You say, well, that doesn't really matter. What matters is the fact that
I'm not saying the time frame isn't important.
Well, but I'm saying
that's a good point. That's a good example on the fly, too. That's, yeah. Of course, the time span is important. If human activity has just caused an increase of carbon concentration in the atmosphere for the past 200 years, why would I use a 10 million year or 100,000 year time frame? Of course, the time frame is going to be relevant to the variability of whatever we're talking about, right? Which is carbon in the atmosphere or surface temperatures.
10 years. You say, well, that doesn't really matter. What matters
I'm not
is the fact
saying
that
the time frame isn't important.
Well, but I'm saying
that it is important.
Yeah,
I'm saying I don't know how to specify it.
Well, you would probably specify it with the beginning of the industrial age, right?
Why?
Because that's when carbon dioxide, which is a gas that's seen as trapping more heat on the planet,
begins to... Why is that relevant to the time over which you compute the variability?
Because it seems like as
The perfect all-season modular urban tactical jacket. Upgraded with 4 built-in heated pads for all-day warmth. The dark heat.
As carbon dioxide has increased in the atmosphere, the surface temperatures have risen at a rate that is a departure from what we'd expect over 150,000 year cycles of temperature variations on the planet.
Not with
Good job. Okay, I answered this way better than I thought I did.
that time frame. That's
Absolutely.
just not the
1,000-year cycles of temperature variations on the planet.
Not with that time frame. That's just not the case.
It's absolutely the case.
No, what do you mean? You just flipped to 150,000 year time span.
What I'm saying is that if we expect to see a temperature do this in a 150,000 year time span, in a 100 year time span, seeing it do this, that's very worrying. Now,
You mean
it could
like
be the
Michael
case.
Mann's hockey stick, the one that's under attack right now in court?
I have no fucking idea what the we're talking. I feel like I just got sucked into a PKA podcast where we're talking about sports. Wait, what?
I'm talking about the record temperatures that are declared, that have been declared for like the past 5 years, that have also increased with the concentration of parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that every model is perfect.
They're
but
not
right now, sure, but right now we're like standing in traffic with our eyes closed.
He always feels the need to interject that. Like, most of the time I'll hedge. I'm like, these things might not be the best. They're not the best. Thank you. That is indeed what I just said.
I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet. I
think that's highly deniable. We have no idea what the impact is from. We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. Almost all the terrestrial temperature detection sites were first put outside urban areas.
I heard this talking point first from Lauren De Laguna. I didn't know this was a popular conservative conspiracy meme, that now that we measure temperatures inside the cities, the thermometers are warmer because the cities are warmer because there's too much heat from the buildings and everything.
Detection sites were first put outside urban areas, and then then you have to correct. Then you have to correct for the movement of the urban areas, and then you introduce an error parameter that's larger than the purported increase in temperature that you're planning to measure. This isn't data, this is guess, and there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it.
I don't think the increase in hungry people on the planet is because of climate policies.
Why not?
Because I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I mean, most developing
Of course they are. They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that, because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities. But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity. And that's direct policy from the UN, fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And then one more thing. There's one more weird thing.
In like 1 minute, it's like every single conspiratorial talking point, every single one. The WEF, renewables actually cause more pollution. They're not energy dense. Poor people are being killed. The WEF is forcibly killing poor people. It's like every single talking point in like 2 minutes, 1 minute. My God. Do you agree with this position on overpopulation, the anti-human sentiment? No, that's a completely and totally fabricated, like, conspiratorial talking point that's usually strung together by 2 or 3 different 10-second voice clips. Anybody that truly believes that is not a person generally to be taken seriously on the topic. It's always like an unhinged. It'll be some person will say something like, right now on the planet, we are reaching critical levels of having massive populations that can't be supported with the food and energy infrastructure that we currently have. If the planet were half as populated as it could be, like, that might be potentially a more sustainable path for the future, but the current course we're on, blah, 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 blah. And then people will take like a minute speech like this and they'll clip out the 5 seconds and they'll be like, they said that if the planet had half as many people, ... Klaus Schwab, who is part of the World Economic Forum, also funds this company, who owned this shell company, who was a holding company for this other company that was charged with creating a drug that caused a child to die. They were trying to kill all your children. This is it's always like stupid.
This is something that I brought up earlier that is concerning to me. I feel like when people get political beliefs, I feel like what happens is, what we think happens, what we'd hope happen is you have some moral or philosophical underpinning. And then from there, you combine this with some epistemic understanding of the world. And then you combine these two things.
Hold on real quick. This point has nothing to do with Klaus Schwab. It's just a typical progressive buzz phrase of too many people on the planet. I don't know if you've never heard this stated. You might be in La La Land. The point is not to say that there's too many people on the planet. It's that conservatives take this point and they make it sound like progressives want to eliminate half the people or sterilize half the people.
But I break really hard from progressives.
I think we had a thing in the subreddit for it.
On the right, I think basically everything you guys are doing with indigenous people is insane, including the complete mass grave hoax. I think that I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I have beliefs where I can break from my side, pretty hardcore because I am not like allegiant to a certain political ideology. One thing that worries me with this constellation of beliefs thing is that sometimes when it comes to evaluating a particular policy or a particular problem, I feel like it's part of the constellation, and sometimes it inhibits people from like taking a step back.
At this point, I don't know how much of that is just the human condition. I cannot think of this thing as an isolated thing, or maybe that's not what Destiny is saying here, but it's just like, when it comes to things, I just can't, like, for example, like when it comes to like COVID, for example, if another country is doing X to solve COVID, and you can't be like, well, we're not doing it here, so don't be afraid of it. And it's like, that doesn't work for people. It is a response to COVID. So every single country that have a response to COVID will have the people of that country will have an opinion how other people are handling it. It's like, it can't be like, well, our country is different. Our country doesn't have the same economic model, doesn't have the same culture. It doesn't matter. People are going to say their response to COVID is X, so I'm going to be wary of X. Full stop. And that's just how people are, and they'll do that for anything. If anything's connected to anything else, it's all together. It's not just, yeah.
And reasonably thinking about the issue. So when we're talking about climate change, you mentioned the WEF sacrificing tons of people, the UN, global elites, 5 times energy costs in Germany, genocidal people. I feel like this is part of like a whole thing where it's like, okay, well, let's take a quick step back and let's just like think rationally about this particular issue for one moment. Okay.
Well, you asked me what the motivation for anti-poor policies might be, so that's why I was.
Well, I did, but I got all of those things before I even asked that question. Because I think it's totally possible that somebody might say, okay, well, when you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it seems to cause an increase in surface temperatures. This has been happening from about the 1800s. And as we started to track surface temperatures, whether the thermometer is on top of the Empire State Building or in the middle of a field, it seems like there's an average rise in temperatures. And people all around the world are observing this. In some places more than others. If you live in Seattle and 20 years ago, your apartment building wasn't built with air conditioner units, you feel that now. If you live in a place in London and you've never had an air conditioner before, now that's not acceptable. I think that people
write as though nobody's watching, because nobody's watching. Suspense is all about making
people on the ground can see that there are changes, and I think that scientists, when they look in labs, can see changes. It might.
He's dominating the debate, and you're not coming back with anything that refutes his claims. You're just casting doubt, but no real counter-argument. True. That's a really good point. Thank you, Dan A. I need more retarded conservatives because I'm not used to functioning like at the 75 IQ level. So I'm not trying to think of like, what would a 75 IQ person watching this conversation think in terms of my responses? And that is true. You cannot refute claims that start from nothing.
Destiny, if the majority of the nation is 75 IQ, then you're not appealing to the majority of the nation. And that is your voting populace.
I can never refute the claim of the elite are trying to kill everybody because there's nothing to refute there. There's not a single piece of evidence given. The only piece of evidence given are facts that we both agree on, but the scary part is the conclusion being drawn or the story or narrative being woven from those facts. That's irrefutable. How can I fight back against a 7-word quote from the WEF? That's not what I'm trying to do, is fight back against your just so story that happens to explain everything in the world with your particular set of bad guys at the helm. Damn, thanks for the 5 gifted subs. So my goal here in the conversation is to introduce maybe a second way of looking at these facts, where it's like, hey, maybe it's actually not evil people that are controlling everything. Maybe some people look at this stuff and they say, hey, well, this might be the best thing we can do for humanity, so let's do that. That's my goal.
Observing this. In some places more than others. If you live in Seattle and 20 years ago, your apartment building wasn't built with air conditioner units, you feel that now. If you live in a place in London and you've never had an air conditioner before, now that's not acceptable. I think that people on the ground can see that there are changes. And I think that scientists, when they look in labs, can see changes. It might be that some models aren't precise enough, and it might be that for reasons we don't even understand.
Well, the economic models certainly aren't precise enough.
Sure, maybe that might be true.
Maybe. They can't even use them to predict the price of a single stock for 6 months. The economic...
Is that what they're used for? I don't know. They could be, but is that what they're used for, and is that their purpose?
Models are not sufficiently...
Finance and econ are two separate things. Inability to predict an economic thing. It's like the difference between, do I use the example, the difference between weather and climate? I hope I do. It's such a one-to-one analogy. Please tell me I bring this up.
Accurate to calculate out the consequences of climate change over a century.
Yes?
Not in the least.
I like the comparison because economic models can't predict individual stocks, but they do predict the rough rise of the market. If you invest in the S&P 500, you get
cataclysmic collapse.
Nope, even with the cataclysmic collapse accounted for, you're going to see about 7% returns on average with inflation over long periods of time.
I wouldn't call an average a very sophisticated model analogous to a climate change.
That's the difference between climate and weather, though, right? Is that climate isn't going to tell you what the temperature is on a given day, but it might tell you the average surface temperature over a period of 1 year or 10 years. And then that's the difference between climate and weather. That's the difference between like the market and the stock.
Difference.
It is a hypothetical, but again, we're seeing more.
I shouldn't even know it's not a hypothetical. It's definitionally true. What do you mean, dog? Climate is not. What's the climate today? The biggest mistake was putting weather systems in cars called climate control because it's confused a whole generation of boomers.
More and more data every single year that things are getting hotter and hotter.
Let's jump out of our cloud of presuppositions for a minute.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that...
Or no, wait.
Okay.
Before we do that, actually,
because I have so many things I've written down, I didn't get to like half of them.
There are some things that we've gotten as a result of investing in green energy that have been good. So, for instance, the power of solar energy has dropped.
Sweat Croc has donated $20. Destiny, stop wasting 3 clicks. Use blah, 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 and no one cares.
Dramatically in the United States, faster than anybody thought possible, such that solar energy is like competitive or beating fossil fuels in certain areas. As long as you can set the solar panels up, you're literally beating fossil fuels.
Yeah, and as long as the sun is shining.
Well, it still is. We're not a nuclear winter yet.
No, but it isn't when it's cloudy. And
that's why I said depending on where you live. There are places, equatorial places, if you're trying to set up a solar panel in Seattle, you might not have as much luck, or in New York City, you might not have as much. Or in Germany, true.
I don't know in Germany how. Apparently in Germany, I think they are actually okay for solar panel coverage, but I'd have to go and check.
Also,
Europe,
I think
or Canada.
There are also other issues.
What is the point of bringing up every random place where it doesn't work? Use windmills.
To discredit you.
Christ.
That are coming up that I think are
maybe not discredit you specifically, but the idea.
Obfuscating our ability to evaluate what's being caused by green energy versus not. When we look at energy increases in Germany, I think there's a similar constellation around nuclear energy, for instance. People don't want nuclear energy because they think of nukes, and they think of nuclear meltdowns, and they think of Chernobyl, and they think of Fukushima, and they think of atomic bombs, and that's it. And that's stupid. And I agree with you. But nuclear energy is a totally viable alternative to other forms of fossil
fuels. Then why does
fuels.
the radical left oppose it? You think it's just this
for the same reason the right opposes vaccines, because it sounds scary and it's a big thing and they don't trust it.
Oh, that's such a good comparison. God, that was such a great one-to-one mapping on of a similar irrational drive getting you to dumb position on the left and right. Good one, Destiny.
Well, the right has a reason to distrust vaccines.
And the left feels like they have a reason. Say that. And the left feel like they have a reason.
They were imposed by force.
Well, you should say, and the left... Oh, no. I think I do this here. Oh, this is such a good...
You get to choose. You have a nuclear power plant. That's imposed by force too, no?
Yep.
You don't get to choose where your energy comes from if you live in a country. You turn the light switch and.
I watched the clip of this. I can't even believe I thought of all this on the fly. God damn.
By force too, no? You don't get to choose where your energy comes from if you live in a country. You turn the light switch and hopefully you don't have a Chernobyl that melts down in your particular town, right?
Well, you get to choose it because you can buy it or not.
Well,
that's
I mean.
choice.
Depending on what we're talking about, there's a lot of things that you do not have a choice to do. You just do not. There's only one energy company. There's only one manufacturer of this. It's. I don't know how it's possible in a country that has anti-monopoly laws or antitrust laws.
It does, but
nobody had a choice with the vaccines.
Nobody had a choice whether or not they lived near Chernobyl or not. Nobody's a choice.
Sure,
There's a nuclear power plant.
Away.
Well,
you just not work in the U.S.
Like 500 miles. That's like telling conservatives when Biden tried to do the OSHA mandate for vaccines, you can just get a different job, right?
I don't want to debate about whether or not large nuclear power plants are frightening. They are.
Sure.
I don't know. It's not bad faith. I genuinely go into these conversations curiously. I like to have the conversation. I'm trying to think of the rhetorical stuff, but I am curious. It's fun to have the conversation. I feel like this is a string of W comparisons and argumentation, and to let him moonwalk away from all of them and be like, I don't want to do this topic. After I just wasted 20 minutes on climate change, I'm actually like, you know what? We are going to talk about this.
Don't we? Isn't it more likely that people are either misinformed?
Love you. See you debating the big dogs now. Please update your wardrobe though, please. You look like a bum in these high-end debates. Love you. I agree, and I have started to. That's why right now this is a Ralph Lauren shirt, and I've got a Ralph Lauren blue set of sweatpants on. So don't worry, buddy. I'm one step ahead of you.
Are misguided, then people are legitimately trying to depopulate the planet.
I'm necessarily aware of what that driving force is.
Isn't it more likely that people are either misinformed or misguided than people are legitimately trying to depopulate the planet?
This is such a good line of questioning. This is what I went into this debate wanting to see. Is it like...
Sure, but at the same time, when everyone is misguided in respect to how a system runs, for a lot of people, it looks indistinguishable from a corrupt system.
Can't we admit that it's more likely people are misinformed or misguided rather than like intentionally malevolent evil forces roaming the planet? I just wish I could have gotten here like 45 minutes earlier, Socratically, rather than the ramble of everything that came before this.
Look, misinformed and ignorant, that's plenty relevant and worth considering. And
I think it's telling too that he doesn't want to directly confront that question.
Look, misinformed and ignorant, that's plenty relevant and worth considering. And stupidity is always a better explanation than malevolence. But malevolence is also an explanation. And no, I don't think it's a better explanation because...
Why would we waste so much money sending food aid, having Bush do, programs through Africa for AIDS, having other billionaires like Bill Gates invest so much money in anti-malarial...
Or you just need a certain number of malevolence in people such that as long as other people aren't aware of it or ignoring it, it allows it to prosper.
Stuff like, why would all the global elites be so invested in helping and killing the people here at the same time?
Well, some of it's confusion.
Okay.
And some of it's the fact that, many things can be happening simultaneously with a fair bit of internal paradox because people just don't know which way is up often. But the problem with the argument, so you tell me what you think about this.
I feel like this is good because I think he's not stupid. He's not. And he does know a lot of psychological facts. He says things that are true on a theoretical level. Like he just said that, like, well, yeah, stupidity can explain things, and stupidity can explain a lot before malevolence. So he knows these things. So we can kind of like plug into some of these internal drives and try to wiggle him to a slightly more reasonable position. Like, okay, maybe all these horrible, evil things are happening, but at the very least, they're mistakes. They're not intentional. They're not by design, right?
The problem with the argument, so you tell me what you think about this. So
this seems kind of like how Destiny would describe the Destiny support group back in the day. He was cordial during the conversation, and now he's acting like Peterson is just a nut job. I don't know. Okay, I might be using harsher terms here, but I'm saying basically everything I said right now to him in the debate. I described the whole constellation of beliefs. I said that I thought that he was falling prey to this. I feel like his arguments were ascribing way more to malice than to stupidity. I'm just being a little bit harsher here, but it's not like I'm pretending to agree with him. I'm just not fighting on every single point as well because we don't have the time, and it would be...
So, Hitler's cover story was that he wanted to make the glorious Third Reich and elevate the Germans to the highest possible status for the longest possible period of time. Okay, but that wasn't the outcome. The outcome was that Hitler shot himself through the head after he married his wife, who died from poison the same day, in a bunker underneath Berlin while Europe was in flames. Well, he was insisting that the Germans deserved exactly what they got because they weren't the noble people he thought they were. And then
Destiny, in the paywalled part, you literally tell him you think he's audience captured. Oh, I don't even know what gets paywalled or not. Yeah. It's insane seeing him jump to malevolence now. In his old speech, he seemed to stress the importance of assuming stupidity using shooters, and I think even Hitler is an example of trying to understand what true malevolence is. I can't believe brains can be broken this hard. It is, and you know what? You saying that just jogged my fucking mind, and I don't think I do I? If I would have quoted this old speech back to him, it would have been...
Night City is the city of dreams, but dreams can be broken.
It's been so interesting to see his take on it now. I think it was Jordan Peterson that did this.
The Columbine, I read about the Columbine massacre and the kids who undertook it. That'll make your hair stand on end if you want to read something that will really disturb you. Reading Eric Harris's writings will really disturb you. No matter how much you know about human beings, reading Eric Harris's writings will disturb you. And Harris is Cain, He says it straightforwardly. He hates human beings. He
hates being itself. He would destroy everything if it was within his power to do that. And of course, him and his colleague were motivated to produce far more carnage than they managed that day.
Are you against professors grading student attendance in college? I don't know, bro. That's a hard one.
Attendance?
I think you should.
I mean, like, and so far, I feel like attendance should be a proxy to where, like, it's probably more likely that if you miss more classes, your grades will slip. But imagine if someone's getting A's and they only show up to half the classes. You're going to punish them just because they know the material. The point of college is to learn. As long as you learn, unless you're saying, no, an educational institution, that's not the main focus. That it should be other stuff. And it's like, as long as you learn and understand the material, who gives a fuck how often you go?
I think for freshmen you should.
Freshmen? I mean,
but also, like, if you can pass the test and do the coursework, like,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly,
fuck, I don't know.
Exactly what I just said.
I don't know, bro. That's a hard one. It's the difference between, like, am I taking a student side of the argument to where, listen, if I can do the work and I can pass the test, why the fuck do I have to go to your class? Versus, like, the enriching environment for all students, and then the environment.
Yeah, but the enriching environment, I guess, like, it should be upon who values it. Like, imagine if you miss out on that because you chose to miss out on that enrichment. That's
like in a more.
Should that be mandatory?
Utilitarian, like to create a.
You're already paying for it to some extent, so it's just like you're paying for it. You should have a bit more choice than when you were forced to in grade school.
Better environment for everybody to increase the likelihood of success. So, like, you should probably attend class. I always thought the most dangerous pitfall, at least for me, was the first time you skip class your freshman year and nobody gives a fuck. You don't get in trouble. You don't get a detention. Depending on your classes, you don't even get a bad mark. That's an addicting feeling. That first time, you're like, wait a second. I can skip class and nobody cares. That's more addicting than heroin. Okay, yeah. I remember my freshman year of school, I had to rein that shit, and I was like, wait a second, I just don't want to go today, and I could just not go to class today. Fuck it.
And that also means, that you don't look for the what would you call it? The purveyor of malevolence outside yourself, right? It isn't someone else, even though sometimes it's someone else. You know what I mean? It's like there are identifiable perpetrators, but that's not precisely the point. The point is something more like that the proper place for the encapsulation of that malevolence, at least the proper place to start, is within the confines of your own existence, and then perhaps within the confines of your family. And that way you're not a danger to those that you misapprehend as malevolent and evil, because you won't get your aim right to begin with. You'll identify them improperly, and you'll...
Oh, it was this. Okay, yes. Okay. If you feel like other people are evil, or you don't know where evil comes from, you should begin with an analysis of the self to figure out, like, where it could come from in your own mind, to figure out how you could even get to some of these positions. And if you don't understand that about yourself, you won't understand it about other people. This is the end, especially
within the confines of your family. And that way you're not a danger to those that you misapprehend as malevolent and evil.
Yes.
Because you won't get your aim right to begin with.
Yeah.
You'll identify them improperly, and you'll take your revenge in a manner that allows you to omit your own responsibility, to act out your unconscious desire for revenge, and to move the world just that much closer to hell.
It would be interesting to see what he thinks about that, because he's so quick to identify people that are pro-climate change as being malevolent. Like, doesn't this contradict with your prior assessment of people that you should do a deeper understanding of where people's views come from and everything? Yeah.
Names. Well, he was insisting that the Germans deserved...
People keep asking about if we're using a boom mic or whatever. I don't think we are. I think we're just using clip-on mics here, but...
exactly what they got because they weren't the noble people he thought they were. And then you might say, well, Hitler's plans collapsed in flames, and wasn't that a catastrophe? Or you could say that was exactly what he was aiming for from the beginning, because he was brutally resentful and miserable right from the time he was,
Destiny, you are so professional. JP does not know how to keep his cool, very emotional. I think emotional is better. I like him when people are emotional. I don't have any complaints about his demeanor or being emotional. I think that's totally fine. I just didn't like being cut off or him talking so much more than me. That's the only thing that bothers me. But I don't mind people being emotional or passionate.
A rejected artist at the age of 16. And so he was working or something.
It looked like boom mics in that one pic you tweeted out. Oh, they might have used boom mic. There might have been a boom mic and a clip-on mic then. There might have been both.
Regarded as demonic. So he was working, or something was working within him, and something that might well be regarded as demonic, whose end goal was precisely what it attained. which was the devastation of hundreds of millions of people, and Europe left in a smoking ruin. And the cover story was the Grand Third Reich. And so there's no reason at all to assume that we're not in exactly the same situation right now.
I think there's a great reason to assume. I think that Hitler's motives and everything that he was trying to do wasn't a secret. I don't think that anybody had to guess that he was incredibly anti-Semitic, that his Aryan supremacy was going to lead to the destruction and the murder of like so many different people in concentration camps. Like none of this was a secret. It's not like he was hiding it.
He hid a lot of it.
I mean, like he tried to make. He hid the death camps, but nobody in Germany was wondering, like, wow, crazy that pogroms are happening against Jewish people. That's so crazy. Or, wow, they're all being shipped to just mainly the Jews to camps to work. Like, that's kind of interesting. Or, wow, he talks about this a lot in Mein Kampf, but maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't think you can compare, like, Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is because if we're applying this...
People in Germany thought Hitler was perfectly motivated by the highest of benevolent...
If I were to take this standard of evidence and apply this lens of analysis, couldn't I say the exact same thing about the conservative constellation of belief? They don't want to intervene anywhere in the world because they don't care about the problems there. They're anti-immigration because they hate brown people. Trump wanted to ban Muslims from coming to the United States because he's xenophobic. Conservatives don't want to have taxes to help the poor because they want homeless people to starve and die in the winter. But like, I feel like
Some of that's true. And yes, you can adopt...
It's such a non-central response. Like, obviously what I'm saying is assessing all conservative beliefs as coming from an evil, malevolent place would be equally foolish as assessing all leftist beliefs coming from a horrible place. But the way they just like, well, some of that might be true. It's like, but that's obviously that's not my point, right?
Die in the winter. But like, I feel like
Some of that's true. And yes, you can adopt that criticism. I think the difference with regards especially to the libertarian side of the conservative enterprise, but also to some degree to the conservative enterprise, is they're not building a central, gigantic organization to put forward this particular utopian claim. And so even if the conservatives are as morally addled as the leftists, and to some degree that might be true, they're not organized with the same gigantism in mind.
I don't bring this up. I don't think I thought of this at the time. Does gigantism only happen when there's a lot of different people involved, or could one person amassing a ton of power be gigantic? Because a fascist authoritarian leader could theoretically be gigantic in terms of the structural power that they possess, even if it's not like a big government. And a large government with very little power could be gigantic in one sense, but very small in another sense. I wonder how you would respond to that. I don't think I bring this up.
And so they're not as dangerous at the moment. Now, they could well be, and they have been in the past, but at the moment, they're not.
Do you really believe that Trump will ruin the country if he is reelected, or are you being hyperbolic? I'm like 40% serious on that. The issue isn't really Trump himself, it's just what he's turned Republicans into. There is a fear that the centralization of power under Trump, or the flagrant abuse of norms in certain institutions could destroy the country in some ways that are very hard to come back from. It would depend on how sophisticated now of a political actor he is, because before his level of sophistication and political understanding was almost non-existent. If it's any higher now, then things could look a lot scarier. You said the conservatives support cancel culture for things like music and games in the 2000s, but that's not true today. Yes, I literally explained why. Didn't I just say that? I'm trying to reach out at the same time. Didn't I just say that when people have power, they like to cancel shit, and when they don't have power, they don't cancel shit? So yes, back then, I think in the 2000s, conservatives had way more cultural control, generally speaking. So they would cancel shit they didn't like, but now they don't have as much cultural control, so they want to, have free speech for everybody, right? The world was peaceful when conservatives had control circa 2000? Excuse me? Are you forgetting that we started 2 multi-decade Middle Eastern conflicts under Bush? Are you forgetting the whole run-up to the housing crisis in 2007? Peaceful for who? Or for which part? What are we talking about right now? I'm not disagreeing that the Holodomor happened as well. The Soviet Union and China were horrible. I mean, I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not going to say those were horrible things. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So why do you let JP strong arm you? It's not. It's just. It's trying to figure out like, what do I want to argue on? Like, do I really want to argue if things like famine or if like. Do I want to argue if these things count as like leftist? It's just, I just don't want to have this. We've already wasted an hour and we haven't talked about much. Why would I want to? It's just picking the things I want to fight with. And I'm kind of thinking here, like, do I want to fight at this point? And I don't. It's okay. I'll give it to you. Whatever. Or like, would the leftist governments of Mao and Stalin be comparable to progressive taxation in the United States. Like, I don't think it's worth arguing. I'm like, fuck it.
And I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
It's a war of.
I'm just saying, for World War II, it depends on how much you attribute the war does to Nazi Germany.
I shouldn't even talk. Let's just move on from this.
But sure, like largely speaking, I don't think that the left beat the right because the right wasn't trying. I don't think it's because Hitler's lack of trying led him to kill less people than who ended up dying during the Great Leap Forward or during the industrialization of the
Yes, well, I also think it's an open question still to what degree Hitler's policies were right-wing versus left-wing, and no one's done the analysis properly yet to determine that.
Well, what do we
Because he was a national socialist movement for a reason. And the socialist part of it wasn't accidental.
Well, but there was no, cooperatively formed businesses that were owned by all of the people for the people and distributed to the people. And I don't think redistribution was high on Hitler's list of things to do for.
That's true. It was a strange mix of.
Which is a cornerstone. Wait, what do you mean strange mix? Which part was leftist? But I don't want to get into the argument of like, they've got Nazi. There's socialist is in the name. I mean, Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. What is the DPR? What the fuck is it called? The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the DPRK. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, they do have it in the name. That is correct. But like,
if I would have been able to hang on to my professorship at the University of Toronto, would have been to extract out a random sample of Nazi policies and strip them of markers of their origin and present them to a set of people with conservative or leftist beliefs and see who agreed with them more. And that analysis has never been done as far as I know. So we actually
see that. I don't think I asked it because I don't want to do this debate of were Nazis left or right. It's such a dumb debate. But a good question, if I wanted to go down this road, is what do you think is a Nazi policy that more left-leaning people would agree with than right-leaning people? Because if he's just going to say like, well,
from the point of view, medical inoculation.
Hitler built more, roads or expanded manufacturing for the wartime economy. Like, come on, is this really? These are the policies that come to mind that are evocative of Hitler's regime.
We don't know, and we could know if the social scientists would do their bloody job, which they don't, generally speaking. That's something we could know. We could probably use the AI systems we have now, the large language models, to determine to what degree left and right beliefs intermingled in the rise of National Socialism.
If I had a better understanding of the history of Hitler, we'll do a World War II. Wait, do I have this? We should do this. This is going on the things to research. Oh, we did college. Fuck this. We're done with this. Oh, I should have a color for marking it off. Hitler's rise to power should be a thing. If I had a better grapple on all the underlying facts, I bet there's a sophisticated argument that I could put forth here where it's like Hitler didn't rise to power because of a left versus right paradigm. It's actually due to unsophisticated populations that confuse the utilization of left versus right paradigms, but in reality, they're just falling for populist figures that are promising them dumb things that don't correlate well with their political values at all. For instance, like conservatives voting for Trump think they're doing it because he's some big conservative leader, but it's not actually correlating with any of their values at all. It's because he's a populist leader and he owns the left, right? Sure. Like that, because I can't tell, are you genuinely suggesting that Hitler's rise to power and his maintaining power in Nazi Germany was done on the backs of appealing to left-wing voters? That's the implication of what he's saying. Do we really think that's the case? It's obviously not the case. And when you think about like his rise to power, if I were to start listing positions, right, intense xenophobia, blaming everything on a mysterious group of people in power that seem to control all of society, who also have a big interest in credit scores and interest rates. Racial superiority, obsession with dominance hierarchies.
That's all technically possible.
Like these typically don't sound like left-wing beliefs. Not to say that the far left people were better, but I think there was a different way that left-wing people maintained their authoritarian regime. It's just a different path. The KPD literally worked for the NSDAP interests. I mean, like, kind of. People say... So leftists will lie and say that the Nazis never worked with the communists early on in Nazi Germany or worked together, which is a lie. But then other people will say, oh, well, they worked together, which is kind of a lie. The reality is that, now conjecture, boom, okay, conjecture time. I think the reality is that when the administration is failing for whatever reason, a certain people, which I think were the Social Democrat Party at the time, when it feels like they're failing, it gives it an opportunity for extremist parties to come up and say they can do a better job. And the KPD and the Nazi people were those people that said that we can do better. At times, they both wanted to work together over the over the people in power, the SOCDEMs, because they thought they could do a better job. So they, would vote for each other or run or do attacks in the streets, other dumb shit. In the lead up to Hitler and the takeover power and everything.
Good education.
So I don't think you could say that like, oh, they never worked with each other, they never liked each other, but it's also not really fair to say they worked together like they were on the same team. I don't think they were on the same team. They just were all, they were anti-liberal. They didn't like the SOCDEMs at the time, so they were willing to watch the system fall. The same way that like Bernie bros and Trumples might have been both against the establishment, but I don't know if they were truly on the same team, if that makes sense. Wasn't there an actual right-wing party in Germany at the time? I imagine the Nazi Party was the de facto left-wing party. What? I don't think they were ever considered a left-wing party. That's not my understanding. I've never read that or seen that. But also, I haven't studied pre-World War II Germany or the Weimar Republic or something. I haven't studied it. It's a great deal, but I've never heard of the initial Nazi Party ever being viewed as a left-wing party.
I think that the issue that we're running into right now, more than anything else, is people live in completely separate realities at the moment, such that if we were even to describe basic reality, how many illegal immigrants came into the United States last year? That should be a factual number that we can know.
How many do you think?
The actual number, probably in the hundreds of thousands. I think some conservatives think it's 3 million per year over the past 3 years because they look at like border contacts or they look at asylum seekers and they're not looking at
I think it's 3.6 million.
Came into the U.S. and stayed?
Yes, through the southern border.
Okay. So
the historical.
Wait, oh God! I'm so triggered. Like, are you about to jump into a hole? No, hold on. Let me fucking Jesus Christ! I can't at any point out before we jump into a hole. Jesus.
I understand the chart. Well, historically, there's like 13 to 15 million people.
I think the number is actually a little lower. I quote this, but it's a bit high. What he says is, I think he means border encounters, but I don't even know if I want to fight on this point. I feel like it's so sticky talking to people because I don't know if I can bring up anything without it like going into a whole other fucking rabbit hole of conspiratorial nonsense. Oh my God.
Stop in the United States illegally. That's like the whole history of illegal immigration in the United States. But hey, maybe I'm wrong there, right? So we can say that's an example of us living in a fundamentally different reality.
Well, the Pew Research Group has established quite conclusively that the variability over the last 20 years for illegal migration in the south border is between 300,000 and 1.2 million.
Well, the Pew Research can only establish, I think, the number of people attempting to cross. I don't know if they can know. I don't know if Pew does like census analysis. I'd have to see.
That's a different issue, right?
Sure.
Because I don't know how you measure how many illegal immigrants there are actually in the country.
I understand. I just want to point out.
That's a good point. There you go. Right? It is hard to measure. That's true.
Now, I agree with you. I listened to a lot of Rush Limbaugh growing up. I understand the fear of having a government agency say climate change. Therefore, we have a blank check to do whatever we want. That's scary.
Which is what they are doing.
The conservatives do the same thing, though.
I'm not claiming otherwise.
Yeah, but the problem is I think people don't talk about it. So, for instance, so we can pretend now that the conservative argument was just compulsory vaccines are bad because they infringe on my freedom. That wasn't the conservative argument. The conservative argument was that mass deaths were going to happen, mass side effects were going to happen. There was going to be all this corruption and stuff related to vaccine distribution, to...
Okay. If people didn't see any videos, maybe this happened all the time and no one was making videos of it. If people saw videos of healthy ass athletes just dropping dead from like heart issues and this only happened after the vaccines were, does that conclusively tell you it's the vaccines? No. But you can't just be like, well, who knows? There's just some random shit that happened out of nowhere this year at the same time we started doing this shit. It could have been a complication with COVID. That's possible. But like, you can't hand wave.
The crazier theories are...
I don't know how. Okay.
Microchips and blah, blah, blah. None of that came true. Absolutely none of the conservative fear-mongering related to the mRNA vaccines came to fruition. But now that's all forgotten. And that was used
What do you mean
as an
none of
excuse
it? What do you make of the excess?
Oh, God.
What do you make of the excess deaths?
For related to vaccines, there are almost none. The mRNA vaccines have been administered related to vaccines.
Random question. You're still going to debate Vinny from the PPD podcast? No, they said that they dodged after the Candace Owens debate. I don't know why. They just said that after that they didn't want to do it.
Almost none. The mRNA vaccines have been administered related to vaccines.
We don't know. No.
We absolutely know. We absolutely. This is like settled science.
What do we know?
In terms of vaccine-related deaths?
No, that's not my question. Excess deaths in Europe are up about 20%, and they have been since the end of the COVID pandemic.
Sounds really high to me. 20%?
Go look.
I'll check afterwards, but is this including like the Ukrainian war with Russia?
No, it's not including the Ukrainian war.
Okay.
No.
Are you implying that you think it's because of vaccines?
I'm not implying anything.
I hate that. That's so
Jordan Peterson never implies any position that he has to strongly defend that he doesn't run away from soon after. Just make a position and say, the implication of my word, at least acknowledge that the implication of your words mean a certain direction. Don't just be like, I'm just saying stuff and I have absolutely no idea how people will take it. Mr. I'm a psychologist or whatever your psychology specialization is in, you should be able to understand that. And the fact that you don't seems a little bit, if I'm being charitable, disappointing. If I'm not being charitable, dishonest.
Not implying anything after.
Why do we use Navan to manage all our business travel and expenses? Because our company is growing, which means more trips and more employees live.
After he brings up excess deaths in response to me talking about the vaccines, it's such an obvious implication. And I think I actually make him own this point later, right?
What the excess deaths are.
But what is your take on what's causing it?
Well, you said that I don't even know if like what are excess deaths Europe. Somebody emailed me and said they were like 7 or 6% or something. I don't know what the actual excess deaths Europe over last year. Excess mortality. This is month over month, right? For 2023. So what was the total by the end of the year here? I mean, my guess is going to be year over year, probably 6.5%, maybe? Maybe 6%? 20% is wild. That would be insane. But 6%. I mean, even 6% is, but okay. What's excess? How can they know how many will die? Well, it's just based on prior numbers, basically. So they try to guess what the numbers should look like next year. And if more people are dying than average, then there's like a percentage increase or decrease for excess deaths. Oh, this is where he got it.
3,123 excess deaths, 4,164 excess deaths. 22.5%, 26.4%, 19.8%. And we see this all the way through the year. Deaths being above what we would expect, apart from slightly below on week 10, slightly below on week 14, and slightly below on week 429. But otherwise, all the other weeks where there's data, this is basically up to week 30, which is roughly the end of July, 36,316 excess deaths. It is clear the excess deaths were not limited to.
Are you going to have another debate with Jordan in the future? If he wants to. Who is this guy? This is a nurse that started off doing analysis of research that was coming out at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And a lot of his initial analysis was like pretty insightful. He seems to be able to read medical literature and translate some facts to people in a pretty effective manner. And somewhere down a few months, I don't know what happened or why or when, he started to go down the huge conspiracy rabbit hole to where his interpretations of things and the data that he chose to look at became super ultra conspiratorial. And now he's basically like a COVID like alarmist, anti-vaxxer relating to mRNA vaccines and all that. And he just basically, if you're conservative and you hate everything I'm saying right now and you want the best anti-vax, the best pro-COVID is killing or is a fake pandemic and blah, blah, blah. If you want all that, this guy's channel is the way to go because this is where a lot of that shit originates from, basically.
That's the place to go,
European excess deaths, official data. European excess deaths, record excess deaths, excess. Yeah, this is the guy. This is probably where Jordan Peterson, where these talking points are coming from, would be my guess. JB tries to meme again as a Euro.
I don't know if he's a doctor. I've heard people say he's not, but I've also heard him referred to as Dr. Jordan Peterson. But the idea that this guy's a doctor, you expect him to be more research. And if Destiny's point of view or Destiny's statements here are correct, this is a fucking doctor that is not looking into this shit. Right or wrong, he's not taking the time to vet stuff. And it's like even a doctor succumbs to confirmation bias if everything Destiny's saying is correct, which is part of the reason why I check out. Because if you're a doctor and you can't even be like, hey, I'm gonna need to research things with a bit more vigor, I can't just have the same amount as every layman or every regular person off the street, then I'm not sure what to tell you if you don't accept that. Okay. Do I need Pavlov's bell? No, I just think I needed the paint. Oh shit. Well, okay.
Expert and hoping that his opponents are insecure and making a call and often gets away with it, which is frustrating. Cool. So
whose risk of death at COVID was so close to zero that it might as well have been zero.
When you're talking about a disease, the risk of death isn't the only thing that you worry about for the disease. There's also
so you're going to talk about transmission? Because that was another thing that...
He's like, he wants to jump right immediately to the next talking point. Oh my God.
Only thing that you worry about for the disease. Also
so you're going to talk about transmission? Because that was another thing that the COVID vaccine pushed. Yeah, but it didn't do anything to transmission.
It absolutely did, because it decreased your chance of getting affected. It didn't destroy. It didn't get rid of transmission, but it reduced transmission.
Yeah, but it was claimed that it would get rid of transmission.
Only if you take one reading of one single quote. I think that Biden said one time where he said, "No, come on, I've heard so many."
I'm incorrect here. It's actually a bunch of bad readings of a bunch of quotes. I thought it was just one bad quote that it was coming from, but people have fabricated a ton of quotes retroactively now. You can see that on my Twitter when I argued against that one guy who was supposed to be having a COVID debate with me, who seemed to duck out. But
times because everybody say, "Oh, you can't."
Like, you can't just look at individual quotes. It's just like, if you're at the point to where you're saying we are going to force this on people, we're going to make it to where you do not have a choice to take it. Your efficacy, your efficacy, and your statements have to be like, you have to be pinpoint. Because if people feel like you're forcing me to do something, and you can't even guarantee my safety with it. You can say I can guarantee an increased safety in it. Sure, and people will say, well, and Destiny will say, it's a lot like seatbelts. And sure, we have laws for seatbelts, but like, I feel like just putting a seatbelt on, a seatbelt is something that I can put on when I get in a car. Is only, first of all, it's only when you get into a vehicle. Full stop. Vaccine is 24/7 all day. You can't unvaccine yourself when you leave public areas. So it's just like, it's either it is, or you are vaccinated or you're not. So like, I understand the comparison, but it's just like, I personally, I don't find it to be apt.
Can't take anything Trump says seriously. Biden one time on the news says, if you get the vaccine, you won't transfer the disease.
That is so silly.
Which was it? No.
Do you know that our prime minister in Canada deprived Canadians of the right to travel for 6 months because the unvaccinated were going to transmit COVID with more likelihood than the vaccinated? So this wasn't one bloody statement. This was
hold on.
thorough government policy
What
in my
I'm saying
country.
is there wasn't a statement given that if you get vaccinated, there is a 0%.
I and everyone I know actually believed the vaccine would prevent us from getting COVID. No, you didn't. Nobody believed that at the time. I wish I would have remembered this for this debate, but the best knockdown argument for this was when Hutch came in, and he reminded me of the fucking meme at the time, which was the meme at the time was everybody was fucking memeing about which vaccine you got. Did you get the Pfizer one? Did you cuck out and get the Moderna one? Or did you super cuck out and get the J&J one? Everybody was talking about the protective percentage, the protection, the immunity, what was it? What did you say? I don't know, whether you got like the 96% vax, the 94 one, or like the 85 one. Did you get the J&J? Like, that was what everybody was talking about at the time. This idea that everybody thought that all the vaxes were 100% effective is retarded. The only people who thought that were conservatives that weren't listening to any real news that wouldn't get it anyway. Like, the only people that thought that are irrelevant because you guys were never getting vaccinated because you're...
The less effective it is, the less of an argument you have for forcing it on people, and that's just true.
Ready to throw whatever anti-establishment dipshit will tell you whatever the fuck you want to hear because it makes you feel better than everybody else or feel good about the world or some stupid shit. I don't think the memes are a great representation of the public's perception of what was going on. What do you think a meme is, you fucking retard? What do you think the term...
So you finished writing your book. Now for the easy part, publishing it. Yeah, right.
Or meme or memetics, what do you think this even comes from? As an analogy to, or as an analog to genetics or genes. The whole point is that memes represent some like cultural idea or cultural phenomenon that become widespread as a result of that. It wouldn't make sense for a meme to be incredibly popular if it wasn't indicative of some sort of cultural or societal truth. It wouldn't make any sense.
100,000 rate of acute myocarditis or pericarditis is not a worse side effect than any other vaccine. I think that is a completely acceptable, given that the disease itself is more likely to cause myocarditis or pericarditis.
Yes, I don't think the data suggests support that presupposition anymore. The latest peer-reviewed studies show that that's simply not true, especially among young men.
So there is an age bracket of young men where the elevated rate of myocarditis, acute myocarditis from the vaccine might have been high.
Why is it that I totally forgot about that and truly believed that I thought the vaccine was 100% effective? Like, it's crazy how you mentioning the meme made me remember that suddenly. Oh, I don't know, dude.
Pharmaceutical companies have helped us tremendously throughout the...
Right, there we go. Fine. No,
You think modern
I don't
medicine
think
hasn't?
so. No, I don't think so.
You're just wrong.
I think they're
You're
utterly
completely wrong.
I see. So you don't think that the pharmaceutical...
Depends on how you look at it, really. If your idea is the symptoms that the medicine says it will, and as far as that, yes. But if that's the only way you're now analyzing it, it seems foolish. You have to analyze it in a way that's like, how effective is it when it comes to forcing it among people? How effective is it when it comes to demonizing other people? How effective is it when you know that there's that pitch directly to doctors? How effective is it when doctors get kickbacks based on how many times they write a specific prescription? It's not as simple. Or does it not work? And then okay, effective medicine is just like, I don't think anyone, or at least I don't think Peterson is engaging in it in that way. It feels a bit of a crude analysis to do so. Not saying that's what Destiny's saying, but it's like you gotta highlight more than just that one avenue or that one dimension.
Pharmaceutical companies who dominate the advertising landscape was...
Have you seen Anthony Magnabosco's Street Epistemology series on YouTube? Was impressed by his rational engagement with constellation beliefs rooted in faith of social motion. Wait, aren't you talking about Peter Boghossian, or do they do that together?
The pharmaceutical...
Ironically, AstraZeneca wasn't even mRNA. I know, that's a funny talking point to watch conservatives wrestle with. Like, bro, there were non-mRNA vaccines, and some of them had side effects, yeah.
Companies who dominate the advertising landscape with 75% of the funding are corrupt.
Corrupt is a very broad...
No, it's...
Do you think that
corrupt with a tinge of malevolence, willing to extract money out of people by putting their health on the line? You don't believe that?
Do you think that we get effective drugs from pharma?
This is true, Destiny. How many pharmaceutical companies just have lawsuits as a part of doing business? It doesn't matter. We can overlook these things, or we can do this shit that we know is shady, or not be 100% transparent with our information that we know at the time, because it'll make us money. You can't have that and be like, if people are if you want to say people are too skeptical to the point of cynicism about pharmaceutical companies, fine, but you can't just be like, I have no idea where this populism is coming from. This is populism, or this anti-institutionalism is completely unfounded. There is like, you can't do that. And I feel like 2020 through 2022 pretty much showcase the majority of that and why that's the case.
Pharmaceutical companies.
Not particularly.
Okay.
I don't even know where I'm at this point. This is why I feel like this interview was so, like, Jesus Christ. I'm like so defeated. What are we even talking about at this point?
Do you think that any vaccines work?
Yes.
Do you think that any...
I don't think 80 of them work at once.
How many vaccines are even... Ordinary vaccine schedule, USA. I don't know the number of. We've got from birth to 18 months. Does this mean you're getting 2 separate injections? So I wonder if you count this as the same vaccine or different vaccines. If I count every injection on its own, we've got 2, 4, 5, 7, 11, 19, 22. There's the COVID. 23, 24. I don't think influenza is even required. 25, 26, 27. 27 shots. And then from 18 to 18, 28, 29, 1. What is this green shit? 3, 34, 5, 36, 30, and this is how many flu shots. Okay, so like 43, 42, around 40, I guess. if we're counting each of these as different vaccinations, which I don't think most people would, but do you think he means the available vaccines, including all the competitors? No, people just have this idea that like after the COVID vaccine came out, that children were basically that old theory of autism is caused by vaccines has started to come up again, and now people think that the vaccine schedule is way too much, literally just completely based on emotions. There's no actual argument for why it's too much. Just it feels bad, and then people throw out numbers, and it's like okay.
Do you think that any?
I don't think 80 of them work.
Like even at that, let's say the number was 80. Why don't you think 80 of them work? Wait, like
at once for babies. I think that's a little risky.
But yet, the ultimate problem was that the mRNA used new technology, and this was just never conveyed to the public effectively. People say, I feel like when most people say the issue was this or that or that, I feel like it's actually just retarded conservatives that never were going to get vaccinated anyway. That's what it feels like. Like I feel like I could wander into like a conservative cope session on vaccines, and they're like, well, the big problem was if you wanted to get vaccinated, you had to get vaccinated by purple fire-breathing dragons. And I'm like, the fuck? I've never heard of this in my life. And like, well, that's what everybody's talking about. And when they say everybody, they mean that in their conservative circles, they all thought that purple fire-breathing dragons were the ones doing the vaccination. Like nobody else thought this. This is like in your wildest fuck circles, and you guys weren't gonna get vaccinated anyway for whatever reason. All right, like,
you bet on this vaccine. Do you think that any?
I don't think 80 of them work.
I guess it just comes down to, you can call this stupid, you can call this whatever, you can call it short-sighted, but even if something is right for people and you prove that it's right for them to do, that it's like, hey, look at all these benefits you can get from it, the moment you try to force them to do it, it immediately just like, I don't give a fuck how many, first of all, I don't give a fuck about the benefits. You're not forcing me to do anything. Fuck you. And then that's where you're fighting from. You can't just be like, well, look at all of this, look at all, it was like, okay, I understand that, but you're forcing, you have to contend with, you should not have overwhelming evidence to prove that you shouldn't, your free will is irrelevant here. And if half the country feels otherwise, you live in a representative democracy. Either get over that or move to authoritarianism if you think that's the best thing for people.
At once.
At least on that issue.
For babies. I think that's a little risky.
But yet we've been on this vaccine schedule for how many decades?
Like
and
this, like this, not like this, not carefully.
I had a ton of vaccines when I was a child. I'm pretty sure that was the norm for people.
The funniest thing is that like, and there's no way to run it twice, so conservatives would never be honest about this. But the funny thing is if mRNA vaccines had been created first, to where, oh, you take the protein that you want to train your body against, or rather a piece of mRNA that helps you manufacture the protein that your body is going to fight against. If mRNA vaccines had been created first, and then we created the attenuated virus vaccines after, holy shit. Because in those vaccines, you're taking an actual, I think it's only viral. Is it bacterial? It might be only viral. You're taking an actual virus that's like been weakened in a way to reduce its effectiveness in your body, and you're injecting that into your body, an actual live human killing murder virus into your body to train. I don't think those vaccines would have ever made it off the ground, even though that's like a standard vaccine type, are the live attenuation ones. It would have never, yeah. In fact, actually, most people probably don't even know about those types of vaccines. I bet if I described that Pfizer has a new technology that lets us take a weakened virus and inject it into people, that this is a way that maybe we could try. I bet people would immediately, out of hand, say that that's horrible and crazy. I'm never going to let somebody inject me with a fucking virus.
It wasn't a bloody vaccine. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It's
what,
not.
Isn't it a 100% success rate? You think it's a definition of vaccine? The whole point of the vaccine is to give your body a protein to train on so that your immune system works. Who cares if it's not the same? There's different
They
types.
used the word vaccine so that they didn't have to contend with the fact that it wasn't the same technology.
There are different types of vaccines
There certainly
that are different technologies.
Fine.
The mRNA vaccines is a type
This
of
used
vaccine
to be
technology.
vaccines. Now this is vaccines.
No, it was like this and now it's like this.
No. It was like this and now it's like this. The mRNA technology was a radical, qualitative leap forward in technology. You can call it a vaccine if you want to, but it bears very little resemblance to any vaccine that went before that.
What does vaccine mean? Do I ask him this? What do you mean when you say vaccine? What does that mean to you?
Regardless of what it means to him, if the understanding of what a vaccine was a certain way up until 2019, and then it changed for COVID, regardless of the reason, even if you say, hey, it needed to be changed for all of these positive reasons that outweighs the bad, if that's the case, then it was still changed, and to other people is going to feel dishonest. Why are we changing the definition of something that's been this way all this time, and now we're switching it to this just so we can encourage more people? It's like a level of, if you didn't think that doing that would increase the amount of people taking it, and that's like outside of that, well, you wouldn't do it outside of that, then you just shouldn't do it. Because people are going to view it as dishonest. People are going to view it as you're using semantics to try to, or like you're playing word games in order to convince people to do shit. And that level of dishonesty, again, to Destiny's dismay, breeds populism. If you don't like it, take a more honest approach. If that's the case.
The reason it was called...
My name is Katerina. I am acting field coordinator in Odessa.
I am Vladimir, team leader.
called a vaccine was because vaccine was a brand name that had a track record of safety, and shoehorning it in that was one of the ways to make sure that people weren't terrified of the technology. And
I think the reason it's called a vaccine is because they're injecting you with something.
Is that true, actually?
It's inoculating you against something in the future because it was protein.
Was vaccine initially a brand name? I don't even know. Where does the name vaccine? I don't know where the name vaccine comes from. What are we looking for the etymology? Etymology. He's speaking figuratively. Okay, I didn't know if it was actually like Kleenex or something, but.
And I think the reason it's called a vaccine is because they're injecting you with something that's inoculating you against something in the future because it has proteins that resemble a virus that infects
there
your
are
immune system.
overlaps between the mRNA technologies and vaccines, to be sure, but they wouldn't have been put forward.
They're not overlaps. It's functionally what it is, or the purpose of what it's trying to do.
Technologies and vaccines, to be sure, but they wouldn't have been put forward with the rate that they were put forward if they weren't a radical new technology, and it's bad in principle.
What do you make of the fact that the definition of vaccine was changed by the CDC? It's a dumb fucking talking point, and I think it has to refer very specifically to like a patent or something. I looked this up a long time ago. I've forgotten all of the retarded conspiracies around vaccines. A vaccine is some form of inoculating agent that you're giving your body, something to help you train against a virus in the future. There are plenty of different technologies to do this. Every vaccine that came before COVID wasn't based on just the same technology. You've got live attenuated viruses, you've got completely dead things. There are multiple forms of the early inoculation of shit was like rubbing disease shit on people or in stories. Didn't George Washington? Am I making this up? Okay, hold on. I'm about to say something. I don't remember if I'm making this up. Were they going to cross the Delaware or some bullshit in George Washington's early army? If you got a sword, did they rub a blanket with smallpox against like open wounds? Am I making this up?
Again, I understand what Destiny is saying here, but the national level makes all of this. Even if you're 100% right on every single point you're saying, the fact that you use force to try to get it across makes it a completely different ballgame. Again, you could be 100% correct. If you want to say then people are retarded because using force, like they should know is good. Sure, but you don't get to use force, at least not when half the country disagrees. That's not the way the country works. And if you disagree with that, find a different country or change it.
Or did this happen? There are tons of different technologies that have been used for inoculation in the past. I don't remember if I'm making this up or not. Smallpox, rubbed, sores, inoculation. Oh, maybe it's a myth. WebMD. Material from smallpox was inhaled or rubbed into the skin. It was hoped that it would give the smallpox to replace the practice. I don't know. Maybe this is a meme. Maybe it's not true. Blowing smallpox material up the nose of the child being inoculated. Insufflation. Okay.
To inject billions of people with an untested new technology.
Isn't it also bad in principle for billions of people to get infected with a worldwide pandemic that initially was causing a decent number of deaths, a ton of complications, shutting down world economies?
Maybe it was.
Maybe.
Not just the excess deaths.
I agree.
It's the VAERS data.
What is VAERS data?
It's the data.
That was dirty. Oof. I don't normally quiz people. I must have been triggered to ask him that. I don't normally ask people a clarifying question like that, but I wonder why I felt confident doing it here. I wonder if I was just so irritated by the misinformation that
Just the excess deaths.
I agree.
It's the VAERS data.
What is VAERS data?
It's the database that until the COVID-19 pandemic emerged and we had the unfortunate consequence that there were so many side effects being reported, it was the gold standard for determining whether or not vaccines were safe. And now as soon as it started to misbehave on the mRNA...
Did he respond correctly? Not really. That's why I don't know why I asked it, because I don't think I call him out. Or I think I explained afterwards, right? VAERS, I don't even know what it fucking stands for.
Vaccine.
Vaccine adverse event reporting would be my guess. VAERS. Oh, that's probably what it stands for. System. Vaccine adverse event reporting. Yeah. VAERS is just like if you get a shot, if you go home, if anything bad happens to you, you call your doctor and you say, hey, this happened, and then they put it in a spreadsheet. That's all VAERS is. It's not a study. It's not well researched. It's not confirming any actual study. It's just saying like, hey, yesterday I got vaccinated. Today I tried to fuck my wife, and for some reason I'm having trouble getting an erection today. Can you write this down? And then they write it down. If enough stuff shows up in a VAERS database, people will look into it like, oh, a lot of people are reporting this type of reaction to a particular thing. But VAERS, I mean, when you're bringing unprecedented attention to a particular vaccine, people are going to be way more noticing any health effect that's happening after a vaccine. They're going to call in and report these things. That doesn't necessarily mean they were caused by the vaccine. VAERS doesn't establish causal links. It just gives you a temporal link between a thing and a thing, a vaccine and a side effect. Right?
Yeah, but I would say if VAERS is being that much more used in terms of COVID, I feel like we would have, at the very least, more information as far as possible side effects or adverse reactions when it comes to it compared to other ones. Even if you want to say, of course, more, you're going to see more numbers because more people are aware of it and more people are using it. It's politicized as a talking point and all that. But I guess in that sense, it's just like, how would we feel like if it was more talked about, if it was a political thing, and we saw the same amount of VAERS like entries, if you will, as other vaccines, or if it wasn't politicized and all that, and then you still saw more reactions, or with theirs. Like I don't like, and it's kind of, but I just don't know how.
Right? I got vaccinated 2 days ago, and now I have a headache. So you call in and you might report it. That's it. It doesn't mean the vaccine caused it. It's just reporting to give you a link between two things. And then eventually there'll be research to see if there's something scary there.
Go ahead and like call my doctor and make this report, and they'll say, okay, well, it's an adverse event after vaccine. Doesn't mean the vaccine caused the headache. And now that more people know about this system than ever,
I'm saying
I'm
that
just saying that theirs is not the gold standard of determining if a vaccine is working or not. Compared to actual longitudinal, prospective, randomized controlled trial
You
studies.
mean like the ones they should have done to the goddamn vaccines?
Like the ones that they did do for the vaccines that they continue to do to this day. Yeah.
Did they do that? Were those all in? I don't know the timelines. Were those all in place before they started forcing them? That because if they were started to force them, and then they came out and be like, "Well, see, we told you it was right." Doesn't matter. At the time that you tried to force it, was that the case? I don't know, but if it wasn't,
yes, that is correct. Yeah. Yes,
you really.
That is how that. Obviously, that is what the studies are. Yeah.
That you're in a position to evaluate the scientific credibility of.
It's 99% meme destiny. 99% of people were fine. That's not what. That's not what matters.
I know what you're saying. It's not what matters. 99% people are fine. But if you see that we're forcing a vaccine on people, we're forcing any type of medical procedure on people, and the overwhelming majority of people are fine, they're going. No matter how many people's like, well, this many people would have died. Is that still like over 95% of people still being alive? Is that still over 96, 97% of people being alive? As morbid as it may be, people are going to look at it like, bro, this is an A+ in our book for survivability across the whole nation. You can't force this on all. Now, if it was like 10% of people are going to die if they get this, maybe if it was as strong, that first variant, the very first, when it first broke out, if that disease or illness strength was consistent throughout the entire pandemic, you'd probably have a better argument. But the fact that, as gross as it is, you need more people to die for your point to be more convincing, unfortunately. And if you're like, that sounds terrible, welcome to humans.
COVID misinformation is the thing that makes me feel the most homicidal of all the topics that I cover. Okay.
Homicidal.
This is one of the cases where we have to talk about absolute number, because the absolute number actually matters here. Okay. If you have a disease that is fine for 99% of people, kills 1% of people, and hospitalizes 5% of people, that doesn't matter if only a small percentage of society gets affected. But if everybody gets infected, that 1 in 5% number, even though it might be a low percentage of the overall population, is a huge absolute number that hospitals can't deal with.
I understand that, but even if the hospitals can't deal with it, does that rise to the level of forced inoculation? That's why
when the vaccines came out, we were talking about social distancing, all that shit. We were talking about flattening the curve. What the fuck do you think that referred to?
First of all, you have to trust third parties to some extent. When you go outside,
I don't have to trust.
Of course you do. You do every day. When you turn the keys in your car,
I can't believe he wanted to fight on this point. What do you mean you don't trust third parties? I should have just asked him about his clinical practice. Did you do all the research for a psychoanalysis? Did you do all the research for any drug? Because he was just like, did he go to medical school? I thought he did, right? So he could like prescribe drugs. How do you know if any of these drugs work? Do you just trial and error them on all your patients?
Extent. When you go outside,
I don't have to trust.
Of course you do. You do every day. When you turn the keys in your car, you hope your engine doesn't explode. When you're drinking water, you hope that the public water or whatever tap or bottled water you got it out of isn't contaminated or poisoned.
He didn't go to med school? Is it just PhD?
As a consequence of consensus?
No, of course you do.
No, I don't. I do that as a consequence of observing multiple times that when I put the goddamn key in the ignition, the truck started.
Why do you know it's going to start the 50th or the 100th time? How many times do you wear
with me?
I'm not playing Hume. You don't know if the denim in those jeans isn't leaking into your bloodstream. To some extent, we have to trust third-party institutions.
We do trust them, and when they fuck up, they get sued millions because they should be doing better.
I thought here, and I didn't because I didn't want to do I don't know if it has a personal attack, and I tried to stay with these, but I thought about going in here, like when you went to Russia for your treatment.
We're in Puebla, Mexico, helping 100 patients with cleft. We're here volunteering and taking this opportunity to teach others about what Operation Smile is and the impact.
And you have like an induced coma and all of this stuff, you're giving literally an infinite amount of trust to the people around you that they're going to take care of you and operate in a proper way to deal like appropriate medical treatment and not harm you, whatever. Like this is the ultimate moving something from one person to another. Delegate? It's not delegating. I always want to say delegate. There's a better word. But you're what am I thinking of? What is Hume? Hume is a philosopher, and he was trying to pull on Hume for some inductive reasoning there. So I don't know. But yeah, this is like the ultimate. You're moving trust onto another party or whatever. Transference of trust, I guess. Yeah.
Then we have to trust third-party institutions to make
determinations. Except when they use force. How about
Especially
that?
when they use force. We trust the police officers. We trust the judicial systems.
We on the left trust the police, do
To some extent, do we? If somebody's breaking into your house, who do you call?
Them.
I'm not a defunder, but if somebody's breaking into your house, you can be the most defund person in the world. Who are you going to call? Are you going to call your neighbor? Are you going to call...
A little bit dishonest. Because you will call the cops in the event of emergency where you're being trespassed against, that you now trust the institution of police. I feel like those are two different things.
Ghostbusters? Are you going to call Obama? Or are you going to call the Black... I should have said the Ghostbusters here. Panthers, you're going to call the cops.
Okay, so tell me this. Tell me this then, because the core issue...
Would you be okay with COVID vaccinations actually forced by the military? Genuine? Yeah, probably. They probably do force vaccinations for COVID. That'd be my guess. Don't they make you take flu shots if you're in the military? Bro, you get so many vaccines in the military, or at least my parents told me you used to. We're reading that mRNA vaccines are far less invasive than traditional vaccines as there is no live virus and the scary spike protein is just some shitty coding that the immune system eats up. No, I wouldn't call it less invasive. You're still getting something vaccinated into you. And there are still potentials for it to go very wrong. Like any vaccine can have a multitude of issues that occur for really complicated reasons from what does ADE stand for? Adaptive diplomatic embolism. I'm just making shit up. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with a lot of vaccines. It's where you have a maladaptive immune response that actually blocks your cells from being able to kill a virus, but it doesn't actually weaken the virus. ADE, what did that stand for? I did so much fucking vaccine bullshit ass research. Antibody dependent enhancement. There's a lot of random things that could go wrong in vaccines. Or some people were saying that the nanolipid particles or that the spike proteins that your cells produce could end up in your heart and cause inflammation. That was where the myocarditis or something. Like, yeah, you would never say that it's not invasive. A vaccine is almost always going to be invasive, but you should have pushed him more on the forced vaccine narrative. It was extremely warranted given the number of deaths. You should have asked him when it can be enforced, if ever. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole argument. I'm trying so hard not to ask questions and to be a little bit more narrow here because our conversation is like expanded or spans so many topics. Yeah. There was no justification to mandate them if they didn't stop transmission. They did. They slowed transmission by decreasing the likelihood of you getting affected or infected. That's a reduction in transmission. If you're not getting infected, then there's a less likelihood of you transmitting because you aren't infected.
Is psychopathy something that can be environmentally induced, or do you think this is core to a person?
It's both. Okay. So, for example, if you're disagreeable, like you are, by the way, your proclivity, if you went wrong, would be to go wrong in an antisocial and psychopathic direction. And that's more true of men, for example, than it is for women. That's why men are more likely to be in prison by a lot. It's 10 to 1 or 20 to 1 generally. It depends on the particular crime, with it being higher proportion of men as the violence of the crime mounts. So you can imagine on the genetic versus environment side. So imagine that when you're delivered, your temperamental...
Why laugh? It's true that it's both, because like everything is everything. I feel like it's hard to like actually have a single line of thought or a single, like following a single train of thought, because every single question has every single answer. Like, do you think that climate change has to be done by evil people, or could like good people do it? Well, I think it could be both. Okay, well, like for the people that are trying their best, do you think that they have society's benefit in mind, or do you think they're like selfishly driven? Well, it could be either. Okay, do you think that like, when you say like selfishly driven, I mean like, do you mean like they're just, like is it selfish for their, like a psychological feel good, or like, so, well, it could be a variety of things. It's just like every answer has every answer.
Like people who hide behind implications and never take a stance. Like, Jesus Christ, I know your ass has to be hurt and been split in half sitting on that fucking fence all day.
The question has every answer, and every answer is every answer, and everything is just like, yeah. Not really trying to defend him on this, but is it not true that every issue has good people and bad people? Like, it's reductive to the point of view, so isn't it right? No, but it doesn't. If you're making strong claims, if you're making strong statements about like climate change is done by malevolent evil actors, okay, well then let's figure out what we mean when we say that. Then you can't, when pushed on anything, you can't become reductive to the point of absurdity or pointlessness, in that everything bleeds into everything. Because you're making strong claims initially. Well, if you're making strong claims, we need to find the foundation of those strong claims, what you believe, and then look at the justifications for those beliefs to see if we believe that it's deductively true, does it logically follow, or if the premises are true. Like, oh, are your initial statements that you're building this argument off of true? But if you make strong statements, and then we try to explore those strong statements, every single thing bleeds into everything else. Everything is violence. Everything is force. Everybody is good and evil. Everything is environmental and genetic. Then it's like, okay, well, I don't know what the fuck the foundation for any of your beliefs actually are.
I would argue even the majority of malevolence in the world is usually people acting selfishly or being...
Isn't it better to explain to Peterson why you say the things you believe instead of explaining here in chat why you say... I don't even know what he's saying. When I'm asking clarifying questions, because I'm trying to figure out like, what do you actually believe, or what is the claim that you're making? It's just, that's why I'm asking clarifying questions. I don't even know what the fuck is being stated at any of these points. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Do you think that society ever exists without...
Use force on your wife?
well, what are we considering force? Is withholding sex, for instance, is that considered force? Or is, saying we're going to cancel a vacation?
Deprivation of an expected reward is a punishment. So you could, well, no, but I mean, this is a serious question. I mean, look, if we're thinking about the optimization of social structures, we might as well start from the base level of social structure and scaffold up.
Sure. So like if a wife is upset at a husband, for instance, would that be considered use of force? I think a negative punishment. You're removing a stimulus to punish a person for something. Yeah, would you consider that like a use of force? Or
I would say it would depend to some degree on the intent.
The intent is to punish a
well, if
like, oh, bro, I feel like I can't.
You just said to punish a, like, hold on.
You're removing a stimulus to punish a person for something. Yeah, would you consider that like a use of force? Use of force. I think a negative punishment. You're removing a stimulus to punish a person for something. Yeah, would you?
You're removing a stimulus to punish a person. He told you the intent in the statement.
Consider that like a use of force? Or
I would say it would depend to some degree on the intent.
The intent is to punish a people.
Well, if
like, oh, bro, I feel like I can't do anything.
That's like,
I would say it would depend to some degree on the intent.
The intent is to reduce the behavior. That's why it's called a punishment, right? Positive or negative refers to adding or removing a stimulus. Punishment or reward refers to whether you're trying to discourage or encourage behavior. So a negative punishment is removing a stimulus in order to negative punishment is removing stimulus to punish behavior, right? To decrease the behavior. Why are we even asking this question at the end here? I feel like it's an endless string of reductive questions until I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about.
Punish a behavior,
well, if the intent is to punish, then it's starting to move into the domain of force.
The lesson here is that Destiny should not have oversimplified how force was used to inject people with experimental technology. Wow, retard alert. JP is right to make Destiny engage in nuance to prove his position. There is no nuance here, you retarded.
If you want to learn Python for a career in data science, IT, or engineering, then you need
fuck. You understand that, like, if we're using this definition of force, you are literally forced to do everything always at all points in time if you live in a state, right? You're forced to do everything. You're forced to wear clothes by threat of by murder, by the way. If you don't wear clothes, you will be murdered, right? Because if we follow that deductive chain of logic, well, what happens? You go outside with no clothes on, somebody's gonna call the police on you. Police show up and they're gonna say, hey, you're breaking the law, you need to go inside or do something. You say no, they're gonna arrest you. You try to resist arrest because you think you have autonomy, they're eventually gonna shoot and kill you, right? Like, I mean, like, every single thing is at the end of the day met with force. In any state that you live in that has a violent means of enforcing, ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever police officer or the law tells you to do. That's so reductively stupid and boring, though. What a boring fucking statement. You're not saying anything of value at that point. Like, hey, I just had a really cool revelation today. Yeah, what's revelation? You know, if you really think about it, the government would kill me if I spoke too loud. What do you mean the government would kill you if you spoke too loud? Well, if I was too loud, and my neighbors reported me for loud noise, and then the building tried to evict me, and I said I didn't want to leave, and then police officers showed up, and they said that I don't have the right to be here, and then I resisted them trying to get out, and then they fought me, and I fought back, and I had a gun to defend myself, and they shot and killed me. In a way, like, it's such a boring non-statement. By the way, this is the actual philosophical masturbation that people talk about, or the academic masturbation people talk about when they say, like, lay Reddit fedora tipper. It's when you've reduced everything to such an absurd level.
Aspect of life that, like, people, to have an actual conversation about it probably would be like philosophical masturbation, but to like ignore it and not acknowledge that it's there, or to not have that as a part of the mix of how you're thinking or evaluating things would be equally stupid in my opinion.
Level that you can literally make any statement to mean anything at any point in time, and you're not saying anything insightful anymore. You're just like, well, everything is. It's just like when you get high, you know, like everything at the end of the day, bro, is about sex. It's about who fucks who. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Well, think about it. If all men or all women said they wouldn't fuck you if you didn't do a thing, and then your bloodline died, and then your genes disappeared, like at the end of the day, isn't everything in the whole world really about fucking people? And then in a way, like, it's just like, okay, it's not. What am I supposed to engage with here? Like, LOL, Destiny tried to make light of the mechanism that the government used to turn society upside down, and JP wouldn't let him just pass it off as simple as everything has force. What do you... Nobody forced you to get vaccinated. You would just have to get tested every week. Like, if you're gonna say that that's force, and I agree that it's a type of force, but you have to be aware that when you say force...
No one forced you to get vaccinated. We're just heavily inconvenience you if you don't.
That's not what most people are thinking of. It's a non-central... Wait, didn't I write this down in one of my sneaky fallacious tricks? What do we call this one? I need a name for this. Is it non-central fallacy or... No, debate pervertry. Oh, I need to write this one down in particular. When you make an accusation about something, I think Scott Adams wrote on this, didn't he? He called it the non-central fallacy. He just made that name up. But it's like when you say something and it's like, oh, yesterday I was forced to do this thing. And when you say force, it invokes, or yesterday I actually hung out with 3 criminals, right? And you're like, oh shit, criminals. Like, damn. When you say criminal, that brings a certain thing to mind. And then you're like, yeah, all 3 of them had unpaid parking tickets. You're like, oh, well, that's not really it's like, what? You're going to tell me that's not a crime now? It literally is. Hello, criminal code, state statute. This is actually criminal behavior. They actually have warrants up for their arrest. They've got bench warrants because they were summoned to court. So they are criminal. It's like, okay, yeah, but that's not really what we're talking about, right? Much the same way when you talk about government forcing you to do a particular thing, it's important to be
in the same way that people say, oh, they're a criminal because they when I think I'm actually in danger. Like this person, it is not safe to be around this person unless you're saying 100% of illegal immigrants. It's not safe to be around them. And let's say that was the case, that 100% of illegal immigrants were unsafe to be around. Probably be a way safe country. They'd probably be doing way more. I would expect the numbers of illegal immigrants getting involved in crime to be way higher if it was 100% of illegal immigrants.
Precise. What do we mean when we say force, right? Because if Jordan Peterson has broadened this to encompass every single potential thing that a government could or couldn't do for you, every positive and negative thing is now being, every positive freedom and every negative freedom is now being implied here. It's like, okay. In that case, fine. Then every single thing that's happening in society is done at force. But if everything is a thing, then nothing is a thing. It's not doing anything anymore. The whole point of words and ideas is to draw circles and boundaries around things so we can discuss them and compare them and contrast them.
Cases where
people literally did get fired. Are you kidding me? If they did, that was up to their private place of employment to determine, which as a conservative, you should fully.
Sure, yeah, okay, but it's just like, imagine if, it's like saying if everyone's doing it and it's not really the case. It's like saying, back in the day, let's say it's like fucking 1880, and I'm a black family that wants to get something to eat. And just like, I have the choice to go anywhere I go. If every single town I go to wants to reject me, then you still have the choice to. You're just getting unlucky. It's just like, choices based not only based on your own personal decision, but the amount of choices you have and what obstacles are in the way of it. It wouldn't just be, can I make a decision? That's stupid.
Fully be supporting. If someone wants to fire you for not getting vaccinated, that's on the place of employment. I'm pretty sure you have the right to do that, don't you?
Yeah, but are being pressured or threatened by the government? Are these completely autonomous decisions made by, it could be completely autonomous decisions made by the businesses, but if not, and it's partially or in some level government imposed, then that is force on those companies. It's not like the corporate companies are choosing to do that on itself. They're just choosing, well, the government is going to make me go through these hoops, and it's going to be less profitable for my company, so I'm going to have to do this, even if our company personally doesn't agree with that.
Destiny, the issue is that we are making medication part of the thing we enforce. That's already happened. There's already mandatory vaccines in society if you want to be part of the military, if you want to go to public schools. That is already a thing. What do you mean?
Yes.
You don't really
public schools and the military, but that is it. We're not saying that every single institution, every single building with multiple people being there. You're saying weekly and monthly tests to update to make sure that you have this. Like, it's complete. It's not even comparable. It's not. You can say it's like well, a paper cut and getting sliced in half. They're both cuts. Sure, but they both make you bleed. Yeah. Yep, they do.
Rehabilitate people in prison.
What is he saying? This is fucking nonsense? I think it's pretty true. I think men have huge crime committing years, and when they're outside of those years, they tend not to commit anywhere near as much crime. I'm pretty sure that's true. I'm not even listening. I'm just reading, trying to get it triggered. Isn't it like 15 to 24 or some shit? There's some age block where if you, it's just the age blocks where men are so much more likely to commit crime. And when you throw them in jail and then you lock them up until they're out of those crime committing years, it generally falls off dramatically. I don't think that's even controversial.
Prison for obvious reasons. I mean, look at the bloody places. They're great schools for crime in large, but if you keep them there until they're old enough, they tend to mature.
Wouldn't you make a distinction between going to school and going into the military in terms of what the average individual absolutely needs? I would say there's a meaningful difference. I'm saying that the requirements are the same. I'm saying there are places where, bro, I can't believe we have to debate vaccines. Please.
In those areas, but we're not talking about. It's just not the same.
Let's let the next one be worse. Where's the next pandemic? Force and the monopoly on violence is a literal prerequisite for the state and government, but JBP is bringing it up as if it's up for debate among anyone who is an anarchist, systematic. Yeah, that's what I said before. Any state you live in, there has to be some violent mechanism of enforcement. Otherwise, people just do whatever the fuck. Just because someone transmits and is more infectious does not cause for panic. I think it's totally reasonable for citizens to try foul when the government tries to make you seem like a leper on society for not taking vaccines for something into a flu/cold. Flus are serious deals, especially to people that are immunocompromised, my dude. And you should feel like a piece of shit because you are a selfish piece of shit, and you should get bullied for it. People should make you feel like a shitty person for it too. If you don't want to.
You can say the same thing on the other. I don't care about personal autonomy. I don't care about people making their own decisions. I don't care about medical autonomy. Oh, I was just like, and you're just as much of a piece of shit as the other people view you. Like, everyone's a piece of shit based on that. Based on your perspective, yeah, everyone is a piece of shit.
want to get vaccinated because you're on some fucking hype, retarded fuck conspiracy nonsense. People should bully the fuck out of you, and you should feel bad for it eventually. Just like all social mechanisms, whether you want to fuck kids or whether you want to be a bioweapon and transmit diseases to people because you're too much of a fucking retard to take a shot.
Bioweapon, okay. If you want to be authoritarian, if you want to use the strongest fucking language possible, sure. If you want to be authoritarian to force people to be inoculated, absolutely. You're just as okay.
Yeah, people should make everybody feel fucking bad for it. I think a cultural mechanism there is totally acceptable. And something transmitting a lot is a big deal because even if they're not dying, if a bunch of people are getting sick and clogging up fucking hospitals, then yeah, that is a deal. It's a big deal. It's an issue. You don't want that happening. Taking the vaccine doesn't even help the people around you. The vaccine was proven to not stop transmission. If you don't get sick, you have nothing to transmit. So if you get vaccinated, and then as a result of that...
So, for instance, every single person that was not vaccinated but did not have COVID at the time, by definition, cannot spread anything. Why are those people punished? Well, you're not vaccinated, so we have no way to determine how much of a spreader you are. You have to determine that I am a spreader. You can't just be like, well, you're all potential spreaders, so therefore, we're going to treat every single person who's not as... No, fuck you.
You don't get sick, then you're not transmitting. What the fuck? How is it so hard to understand? That typically you're immune for the rest of your life after infection. That is... Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. For measles or for diseases in general? For measles, that might be true. I don't remember. I think that might be true for measles. Do you get measles multiple times? I'm not sure if that's true or not. A person spread measles for 4 days, no infection, it makes a person immune for the rest of their life. Okay, so measles is generally a permanent immunity afterwards. I'm pretty sure the CDC confirmed asymptomatic transmission with COVID. You can transfer asymptomatically, but if you never really develop COVID at all because you're vaccinated, which means you have a much higher chance of, well, for the early infections, I don't know for Omicron, I don't know what the protection is now. It might be down to 40, 50%, I'm not sure. For the early ones, if the COVID entered if the SARS-CoV-2 virus enters your body and barely replicates before being eliminated and destroyed by your immune system because you've been vaccinated, then your likelihood of transmitting is way lower because you're not sick. You're not even creating so much of the virus. Asymptomatic spread is just not a thing for Destiny. Asymptomatic means that you have a disease, but you're not presenting symptoms. Asymptomatic doesn't mean a-diseased. It doesn't mean no disease at all. It means that you're not developing the symptoms. That's why it's called asymptomatic. What do you think the symptom part means? And what do you think the A before it means? How many jabs will you take if they keep telling you? How about a healthy sense of skepticism? I like how you're so fucking retarded that you'll sit here and get diseased over and over and over again. You're like, oh, you're so retarded for getting vaccinated.
They'll say, oh, well, I won't wait to... If you want to get vaccinated, just don't force it on other people. If you want to say you're forcing
you code for the 17th
potential risk with other people, true. But it's like, that's where you have a conversation. That's where you have the conversation. You don't get to just be like, well, because that's there, we're just going to override that conversation because we think this is more important at the time, where we don't know we're ignorant to what the future's going to look like, or we're too scared and panicky at the moment, so we're just going to go ahead and steamroll that. And like, okay, then you take all the baggage of what it means to steamroll. You made that decision. So if let's say you had to make a choice between, if we don't steamroll this, more people are going to die. But if you do steamroll it, people will have less faith in institutions. You got to pick your poison, bro. That's the way the world works. What is the battle that I'm going to focus on now? And what are the outcomes of it? And if you're not prepared for the outcomes, reevaluate the decision.
Time. Like, please. Oh my God. Eat shit. Literal.
The tit for tat is very... bounded, right? It's like
when you say tit for tat, are you referring to that Veritasium video about game theory? No, I got this from Robert Sapolsky and his talk about, is it evolutionary biology? That tit for tat systems are basically how species ensure good behavior with each other because there's always a punishment and there's some level of charitability beforehand, like tit for tat or tit for tat tat or whatever. There's like these different tit for tat systems so that you enforce social behavior because if you f up, someone's going to keep you in line. Never had COVID, never had the jab. People who got the jab 15 times have gotten COVID. Womp womp, Destiny. Yeah, you're not bragging, my dude. The fact that you're a 33-year-old, 250-pound fucking virgin dying of type 2 diabetes in his parents' basement is not something to brag about. Like, congratulations, you've never got a particular disease before? What, do you think that your body is like super immune to it because you didn't get vaccinated? Like, what kind of retarded argument is that? Holy shit. Like, if your body is so strong, you should get asked by a dude with AIDS 30 times and see if you resist it then. See how...
The argument is that if I'm fine, if so many people are fine without getting it, then the hype at the time, I'm not going to say it's unwarranted, but it's going to feel overblown to those people. Like, I'm fine. Why are you freaking out on me? Bro, I'm fine. I'm fine. My family is fine. My friends are fine. My coworkers are fine. Why are you blowing up on me like this?
How like disease resistant you actually are. My God. What if I just don't want it? I ain't hitting on the vaccine, I just don't want it? Then base, dude. Let's just be honest about it. Say I don't want to get that shit. Then fine, base. You just want to win the discussion at Destiny. When you realize you're not winning, you say the other person is stuck in their ways, not realizing that you are just as stuck. I've always said this a million times. If you show me the data, I will change my mind. I've done that. I've changed my mind on big issues in the past. I've changed my mind on small issues in the past. You will never change your mind. There is no piece of data. Adult content enjoyer. What data would you need to start taking mRNA vaccines? Tell us in chat. What would you need to see? Like a reasonable standard that would also be approved for every other type of medication. What would you need to see? Explain why they changed the definition of vaccine. That change had to do with like the way that a line was written in some like insurance or FDA classification bullshit or whatever. It had nothing to do with the actual idea of what a vaccine is. Like, again, like I said, you guys wouldn't accept attenuated virus vaccines. If those were created today, you wouldn't accept it. You would say that's not a vaccine. That doesn't count. What do you think a vaccine is? If I were to ask you what is a vaccine, you have no idea. You can give a coherent answer. You probably don't understand any of the underlying technologies at work here, especially the mRNA one. Like, so what do you mean? Why they change the definition of vaccine? Like, there's tons of different technologies that have been employed for different types of vaccines. Whether or not the FDA had to change the way that they labeled a particular thing is not relevant to the scientific understanding of what a vaccine is or what it does. Have long-term side effects ever been recorded from a vaccine ever? I'm not aware of that. When I did research on side effects for vaccines, I think what I saw was, I think 2 months is the longest recorded date for vaccine side effects. I came across that a few times. I've never heard of any other vaccine producing like long-term side effects, like longer than 2 months. I haven't seen that anywhere. Somebody wants to link one, go for it, but okay.
All over the earth, God is raising up a new breed of wealth builders who will use their money to shape the course of world history without.
Yeah, we got a 35. Peterson Jackson was making some good points, but Tony Spector said no, it's like this. 2 hours and 28 minutes of Destiny glazing himself. This has been a great year for debates. True. The Kolak genocides, I don't see an issue with redistribution. They were despised by the regime because they were more affluent landowners who employed peasants and some resembling of a free market exchange market. The regime viewed this as a threat and sought to redistribute their wealth and land by evicting, murdering, and relocating Kolaks. The idea of coming has nothing to do with tradition. That's when his idea meant taxes, even though he talked about the killing of one view in 20 seconds. Oh, wow. I'm a kind of the piece. I got a passion like the coolest. Oh, that all an extreme statement. I don't know about. I know Steven likes to get a rise out of an interlocutor at times to create disagreement for your views. Destiny has tanked his views for a number of reasons for other shit. So I don't know how much I believe that. Yeah, okay. What is the next video we're watching? What is on the subscription list? Oh yeah, I was going to watch. What is that? That's almost down declining viewership. Is Destiny still live? I don't believe he is. I don't believe he is. But it does say he's still alive. It says he's live, but hold on, let me just fuck. Wow, the whole thing actually closed. Great job. The whole window just closed. I guess I was doing too much for it and it fucking fell apart. No, he's not live. Okay, well, what is the next video we're gonna watch? We're gonna watch some. I won't be streaming almost 3 hours. What time is it? 9:42. Debate. Let's just found the most interesting video they have on modern day debate. Trans men are men. Is trans ideology circular? Oof. that John Zerka? That can't be John Zerka. Is that John Zerka? Don't tell me that's John Zerka, bro. Is that John Zerka? What the fuck? This man is really on modern day debate out here debating flat Earth. Uh, uh, hold on. Second. Pull up the OBS. There we go.
Why on a flight manual, and even in military flight manuals, or just a regular plane, why does every flight manual, when you're learning to fly a plane, say the Earth is literally fucking flat? It literally says the Earth is not in motion, just land the fucking plane. How the fuck? There's nothing to do, it's flat.
The only argument I can think of is that relative to the people on the, like, what they say, like the Earth is moving at like 300 miles per hour or something like that, and it's just like you don't even feel like 300 miles per hour is fast as hell, but being on the planet at the same time you don't feel it. So perhaps like the physics of just planes and how we do buildings, how we do transportation and all that, just in general, doesn't take into account the speed of the Earth, because like we're so small in comparison to it that we might as well view it as flat when we're doing our calculations. I believe that's the answer, but
No, it doesn't say that directly. So
no, it says you have to fly the plane like the Earth is flat. It absolutely does say that.
It says you can treat the Earth as if it's
no.
flat.
It says you have to. Yeah. Can you cite a manual that uses the globe?
Can you cite the manual directly? Quote it directly what it specifically says.
It says that we use a flat Earth model to be able to map out how to use the plane.
Yeah, we can use a flat Earth model to fly between 2 points.
But how come the Maritime Association that uses flat Earth map, the Meteorological Association that uses flat Earth maps, airplanes, how come everything launching cruise fucking missiles have to use our ice wall, the ice wall that you guys laugh at? You use our ice wall maps. You guys use, and it's not an ice wall, it's the highest shoreline on Earth, Antarctica. And look at the Antarctic Treaty if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But everything uses our maps. Nobody uses your retard globalist maps. Nobody.
Because
because
it's a two-dimensional
high reality.
Three-dimensional logic. So you have to like make maps flat so you can read them, but they're approximations.
Have you been to that?
Hold on. You said you have to make. Hold on. The idiot said you have to make maps flat. Okay, make it flat. I'm sure that's whatever. I'll give you that. I'll give you the dumbest argument I've ever heard. You have to make it flat. You have to literally change reality to launch a cruise missile.
No, have you seen a book? Like books are flat, right? Have you ever read a piece of paper that was curved? I mean, I don't. I flatten them out.
Okay,
that's what I'm talking about.
Check this out. I'll give it to you, and I'll still win. Let's say that made sense. What you said, like you have to make the map flat. Why? Then why are they adding an ice wall? Why aren't they using Antarctica, your little fucking continent island?
They don't draw it as an ice wall.
Huh?
Ice wall.
What?
They don't draw it as an ice wall on the map.
Wait, where's Antarctica on the flat maps?
Antarctica on the flat map depends on the map you look at. Right?
No, name one that has a little
azimuthal equidistant. The one the airplane uses in the azimuthal equidistant. Where's Antarctica on that map?
In many maps, it's on the bottom. It's on the south.
How can you have a flat map which is just sitting there by itself on the bottom?
Are you kidding me? What is the bottom of a flat Earth?
Have you seen like a map where the globe is?
You don't even know our model.
On top?
Yeah, Antarctica goes along the entire bottom of the map. So
in some of them, You're talking
No,
about
no,
you're
no,
talking about a
dude,
specific
my
type
dude,
of map.
you are literally
Global
embarrassing yourself.
after this, son.
Antarctica would be
Been streaming
180
for
degrees
almost 3.5
away
hours.
from
Good
north.
stream.
Just like a compass has one magnetic north, there's no
Yeah.
south pole. Circumnavigate east to west like a finger on a plate, like Christopher Columbus, like the sun. You circumnavigate east to west, and the 4 points of south would be 180 degrees away from north. You're not smart. You're
I think
not
it's a
smart. How many vaccines
Robinson.
you got? How many
You're not
vaccines did you
smart.
take?
I think this is irrelevant to the discussion. I think it's a Robinson map or Cater maps, right, where they show the Antarctica on the south side of the map, right? It's not shown as a wall.
Where would
shown on the
South
bottom.
be on a flat Earth, bro? Where would South be on a flat Earth?
Well, we're not talking about we're talking about maps they draw, bro.
Where is South?
Wait.
So when you said Antarctica is at the bottom, what the fuck is the bottom of a flat Earth map? What do you mean bottom? Do you understand?
I'm not talking about a flat Earth map, bro.
That's what we were talking about.
Okay, hold on. Everybody stop. Hold on, stop. Everybody stop. Ozian, what are you asking him right now, Ozian? I'm sorry.
We're talking about maps they actually use. The maps we actually use, not all of them show the stupid friggin' ice wall around the edge. Are you kidding?
The point is, you guys use our maps. We don't do shit with your maps.
Yeah.
The
wole world treats the Earth like it's flat.
If you want to make millions and billions of dollars with an airline, you use geocentric maps, flat Earth maps.
And you fly the plane like the Earth is flat and stationary. I just broke that down in my opener. You literally fly the plane like it's just sitting there stationary and it's flat.
Like your conscience is telling you you're losing. You know that. And number two, if all of us were in a helicopter, since you guys
how can you read minds? Are you magical or something?
Yes. So if all of us were in a helicopter, right?
Oh, okay.
If all of us were in a helicopter right now, it's cute. Like we got our seatbelts on and shit. And let's say we're floating there for 10 hours. Would we land on
You're not coming back, probably.
Would we land? And let's say we're floating in one spot for 10 hours, and then we drop back down. Would we land on a different country since the Earth is spinning?
No.
Why? Why? Is it Coriolis? Is it Coriolis?
The atmosphere. You're moving with the atmosphere. You already have.
Oh my God!
You already have the acceleration of the Earth. So the Earth is moving. You go up.
Dude, you're about to get dunked on.
Dude, you're about to get cooked, bro. That was big. You're about to get cooked.
But you guys still haven't been high enough to see
does
that.
the Earth's atmosphere move with the Earth? Yes or no?
The overall atmosphere moves with the Earth. Yeah.
Does it move in lockstep with the Earth, or is it separate?
No, it's
show me a
you
live
got Coriolis.
shot of the map. Or
Hold on,
it's separate.
Wait. So the atmosphere is also rolling. How do planes get anywhere? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Thrust and
Are
lift.
you fucking joking?
Dude, do you understand they'd have to account for Coriolis if the Earth was spinning separately than the atmosphere?
We have to account for Coriolis that the Earth was spinning separately from the. It's not spinning separately from the atmosphere.
You just said it was. So what, you're saying it moves in perfect lockstep with the Earth now?
No, it doesn't work in perfect lockstep.
So then it's moving separately. Then it's moving on its own. It's not.
So the overall atmosphere is moving in lockstep, but you have parts of the atmosphere that are moving in different directions.
You're so wrong, dude.
But the overall atmosphere is moving at that speed. You have some parts of the atmosphere that's slowing down, and it looks like it's going in the opposite direction, but it's all traveling in the same direction.
Do you agree the higher up in the atmosphere you go? Wait, time out. You said the same
have been
speed.
to space at all?
You said the same speed. Do you agree the higher up you go in the atmosphere, that means it'd have to go a greater speed because that would be a greater radius, so therefore it'd be a greater distance traveled in the same amount of time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what gives it the energy needed to increase speed proportionate to altitude in your atmosphere?
Fuel.
The pressure of the it's friction.
What?
The
Combustion
pressure of the
fuel.
Hold on. Let him lose. Let him lose. You'll have your turn after. Go ahead, Oslan.
Oslan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oslan, go. Oslan, don't be afraid. Go. What were you?
So you're asking where they get the energy for the atmosphere to move at the higher altitudes, right?
Yeah,
that's the
faster and
question.
faster. Yeah.
So you got layers of friction with the atmosphere that's moving the whole atmosphere with the Earth.
What?
Would the layers be consistent?
No, like
It'd be different, right?
Overall, it moves at relatively the same speed as the Earth.
Flat Earth is so strong is because there's so much.
Did you just say friction?
Angular rotation
to a regular person, it just wouldn't make sense. there's so much that like it's just it's not it's not intuitive, is what I'm saying. Just like back in the day when it was like the sun revolves around the earth. It's not intuitive for people. So even if you are correct, it's just like there's a level of lived experience that there's a wall you're gonna hit.
Angular rotation, right? Yes. So wind drags across air, right? You got the ground that's moving, it's dragging the atmosphere with the earth.
So these are amazing. Wow, that's good.
Wow, these are good.
It's delicious.
What if I told you that you could get your daily dosage of greens with this one packet of Groons gummies?
These are really good.
Right?
Bravo.
What are you saying?
Finish it. Let him finish it. Don't interrupt.
No, that's it. I don't know what you're asking. It's very simple.
So
like,
Very simple. Here's what's very simple.
picture
The law of
of
conservation of energy says energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred.
no energy is being created there.
Buddy, chill out. It can't be created, dude. You're saying, bro, calm down. Law of conservation of energy. So if I go higher, then that means the atmosphere has to travel a greater distance
Debate bro tactics, like the calm down.
in the same amount of time if it's all moving with the earth, which means it has to be
It's
going
hyped as
faster.
Zerka was.
In
You
order to
can
go
tell Zerka to
faster, a
calm
greater
down.
speed, it needs more
Like
energy, or it would
lights.
violate the law of conservation of energy and momentum, which are like tenets of physics. You were just talking about science earlier, right? So see if you understand science. What
you
energy
loved
is
Einstein.
produced.
You loved Einstein earlier. Now you hate him.
You have the rotation of
What
the earth
argument is that?
that's causing it to move. So you have the
What?
energy.
How is
that's
it
being
causing it to
transferred.
move?
Centrifugal
I think-
force.
Centrifugal force is causing the
Centrifugal
atmosphere
force?
to move.
Something spins hard enough.
Hey,
It
Vaughn,
moves.
can I ask you what is
moves the-
centrifugal
No, it's
force?
not.
Vaughn, what is centrifugal force?
No, never mind. I'm thinking of gravity. Never mind. Never mind.
I wouldn't.
Gravity's
look at
holding
that.
the atmosphere
You
to
laugh
the
at
earth.
that and
So you
someone-
got that force of gravity.
Someone has the humility to say, actually, no, I'm thinking the wrong thing. You just laugh immediately. Like, you're so focused on, like, I guess you're really focused on winning.
Contributing
Okay,
to
so
the
if
holding the
gravity,
atmosphere
it's
down.
actually not gravity holding.
Sorry,
it,
that's
it's bringing and
nothing
warping it.
sillier
That's-
than what you guys.
You call it electrostatics, I call it gravity. We'll
No,
just
no,
concede.
your model, your religion says it's the bending and warping of space-time, which causes a gravity well, and that's the gravity is the effect of that. Okay, and that would still show you that as you go higher and higher, you're getting further away from the center of mass, and you're increasing
Yes.
the radius. Therefore, it's going to be dragged behind due to fluid mechanics. Like a blender, the outside of the blender moves behind the center of the blender. The further you go out, it's fluid.
But eventually it catches up. So the outer edge,
It
when you spin
catches up.
something, yes. And when you take a blender, right, you turn the blender on, the inside moves at the speed of the blender quicker than the outside of the edge eventually catches up over a period of time.
Why?
With the rotation of the inside, because of you're transferring force from the center to the outside through friction.
Okay, so now you're invoking a solid container.
Parts of our than the outer parts of the hurricane.
Around the globe.
No, you got gravity that holds it. They holds the
Whoa.
atmosphere, and we already explained
Damn,
that.
You're good.
No, no,
If you,
you're
want to
really
call that
good,
a
dude.
solid container, you can call it a solid container.
It's not,
we
dude.
call that
It's not.
gravity.
Your model claims that tons of gas goes off into the vacuum anyway.
Yes, we lose gas and we collect gas as we go
Well-
through the solar system. We
You know,
we lose
let
gas,
me-
we gas out, and
meteors
we
that
sweep
come
it
in
up.
and-
Wait.
Yeah.
All right, like let's simplify it. I get a Sprite and I open the bottle and it goes because it's a pressurized system and it has a cap, a dome, a firmament. At what point in altitude do you just go up, and magically pop into space? Like, boop! Like at
What's
what
a
point do you guys?
What's a meteor to you then?
When do you guys
What's a
magically
meteor
pop
or
out
an
into
asteroid to you
space?
guys then?
Since you guys don't have a dome,
Where do those come?
At what point do you magically pop out into space? Because when we use a GPS, let's say Google Earth, right?
What's a
Google Earth was
meteorite?
I know, dude. Just hang in there, man.
Where's that coming from?
Nothing you can say can stop the humiliation coming. Just relax. Now look at this. Google Earth was filmed. All the pictures were done by the Google plane and not satellites. And if you go out far enough in Google Earth, when
So
you
you just
leave
don't
low
answer
Earth,
the question.
when you leave low Earth orbit on Google Earth, it turns computer generated. It's not a photo anymore because they don't leave low Earth orbit. You understand?
You're talking Google Earth is your evidence. Okay. whatever.
No, I'm using.
Okay,
You
so
calm down.
we arbitrarily call
I'm
space
explaining
100
GPS.
miles above the surface. So, I mean, we
Dude,
can set
honestly,
it any
you know who
point.
you remind me of, Oslin? Those professors in college that
Ozian?
take. You remind me of those professors in college that take $100,000 from you, and then you spend the rest of your life broke with a retard degree. You know what I mean? You remind me of those fake science professors. You know what I mean? Like
Thank
it's
you.
like most professors are not that smart. You guys just pretend.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's been pretty thoroughly exposed.
Jeff Lynn's ELO.
Great stream. Great stream. We're gonna cut it here. Okay. Yeah, we're just gonna cut it here. That was a bit much. Okay. Good stream. 40 minutes. Great. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. I'm gonna head out. See you guys next time. Whenever I